across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very, very good morning to you. It is just coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock in the morning. This is Talk. It's the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Second day back after New Year. Are we still, just want to check, are we still Happy New Year'sing it? Just need to double check that for all my guests today before we start. Anyway, it's great to have you join me, whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device. Thank you so much for your company. I'm with you live until 1. If you miss anything of the show, missed anything from yesterday's show, I don't know, missed anything from a show in December, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You've got no excuses for not finding it. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to talk the latest on the ousted Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro's captured by US forces and his appearance in court, and what happens next for Venezuela. Also, what happens next in Greenland, as Donald Trump has been warned that if he seizes Greenland next, that would spell the end of NATO. And Keir Starmer's plan to hand over yet more sovereign British legal powers to Europe. It'll be the first time since Brexit. Well, I don't even know what the point of Brexit was if we go ahead with this, what's called dynamic alignment, which is what he's planning to just basically take us back into the EU by stealth. And we're also going to be talking about why the Chancellor's blocking new financial support for struggling pubs, because they really don't care about them. Also going to be talking a little bit later about Grok and the use of AI imaging on X, formerly known as Twitter, where people are able to say, hey, Grok, can you put this person in a bikini? It's inevitably a young woman. And we're going to be talking to Samantha Smith, who is one of those who's had a picture of her protesting at an event put into a bikini. I don't know why anyone would want to do this. He wasn't legally obliged to see me in that state, such as my husband. But someone did that to an image of me over my holidays over Christmas and New Year. Should it be allowed? By the way, they're also getting it done for children, taking a picture of a child and putting a child in a bikini, because that seems like a normal and safe thing to be allowed to happen on the social media, doesn't it? Well, we'll talk about all of that later in the show as well. So much to talk about. Delighted to say, and I'm going to throw in a Happy New Year. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, is joining us today. Happy New Year to you, Tom.
Happy New Year, Julia.
Good Crimbo and New Year?
Absolutely. No, when I got the chance, been between everything going crazy in the world, as is always the case.
He's been one of those young people, and he's moaning about the fact that he's had to work over Christmas and New Year. You know that.
Who said I was moaning, Julia?
Oh, well, there was a bit.
There was a bit.
Now, I'm just very excited you're actually here. Although we've got lovely sunshine coming through in London, the capital city. There is snow everywhere. My in-laws have been snowed in. They've got digging themselves out of the snow, and lots of the country has got snow warnings. Everyone's being told stay at home, don't go to school, don't go to work. We are once again. It's one of those slightly we can't cope countries. It's either raining too much, wrong leaves on the line, the snow, it's too hot, it's too cold, there's too much sun, there's too much snow, and we don't function. What's going on?
Is it a legacy of COVID thing? I mean, they didn't say...
No, it was happening a bit before then.
Well, I'm sure it was, but they didn't quite say, stay at home and protect the NHS, save lives. But there is often the undertone, isn't it, is that whenever, as you say, it doesn't matter what the weather is, it doesn't matter what the climatic conditions are.
Oh, by the way, it's always climate change as well.
Yes, of course, whether it's hot, cold or in between. It's always climate change's fault. It's interesting, it has disproven all those people who said we were never going to see a white Christmas again.
I'm so shocked by that as well.
School children in Britain will never know what snow looks like, and yet, obviously, large parts of
I think all the skiing in the Alps was going to be over by about 5 years ago as well. That's going all right.
Exactly. But at least we've got all these warnings to tell us to worry, watch out for icy conditions when it's sub-zero, as if anyone needed to be told that who wasn't under the age of 5.
I kind of think of it as a Darwinian thing, which is kind of, natural selection. And if you can't function... Look, there are people who are in trouble, who can't get out. And if you're elderly and you might fall, you've got a problem with balance, maybe this isn't a good day to go out. I mean, But the idea that schools are closed, I find so utterly ridiculous. Now, that said, we are a country which doesn't largely have extremes of weather. So when we go, Canada copes. Yes, because it's basically snowing for like 3 months every year. And Norway, of course, the whole place is designed around that. Yeah. Or if it's somewhere that's always very, very hot in the summer, everything's designed around that as well. We kind of design our country around sort of moderate weather and a bit of rain. Although, again, my local tube station, for no good reason, has tiles on the floor, which apparently are slippery when wet, which is at least half of the year. But, you know, if we don't plan that well. But it is a symptom of a country that's just sort of, be a bit risk averse. And if one teacher can't get in, none of the kids can come to school, as opposed to, so it's too dangerous for them in the playground to be at school or for them to get to school, but they can absolutely get to the nearest hill and go tobogganing all day, which is probably a better use of their time, let's be honest, given the state of most schools these days.
And also, you remember the crazy stories you'd hear, you know, the number of times that train lines have to close because there are too many leaves on the track. We have autumn every year. You'd think they would be prepared for that.
Someone should tell the NHS.
It was too sunny once and they stopped a bunch of trains leaving. One of the, you know, whether it's Clapham Junction or London Bridge, I can't remember. So, yeah, this is a very British disease to a certain extent.
We need to get on top of this stuff.
It's a weird mixture of just sort of fussing over things and hypochondria, which we seem to have picked up much more recently.
Exactly. Well, these are the people who say, oh, it's raining a bit, so I can't go to work. But anyway, we've had our whinge about what's going on. Let's talk about international affairs, shall we? Because they do have an impact on us. A lot of people have a whole sort of view, what happens in, whether it's, you know, Iran or Israel or Ukraine, doesn't have any bearing on us, but of course it does, because it's about, you know, people funding terrorism on our own streets. It's about the price of oil, the price of our energy bills. You know, if you're worried about putting the heating on right now, think international affairs, folks. And mad net zero policies as well, of course. But what's happened in Venezuela has been, you know, leading the front pages since Saturday. It's an extraordinary story. This, you know, as Americans are saying, look, this is raid on basically a narco-terrorist, and they basically, you know, pulled him into court. I mean, the perp walk, the helicopter, you name it. It was, you know, they know how to put on the Hollywood, you know, images in America when it comes to the suspects for crimes. But Nicolas Maduro telling the US court, you know, he's a prisoner of war. His wife, rather sweetly saying, "I am the first lady of Venezuela." Sweetheart, I hate to tell you, you're not even the first lady in your cell in that Brooklyn prison anymore. It'll be about a year before they actually have the full trial, we reckon. He's going to do some sort of deal, who knows what. What do you make of the fact that his vice president has been sworn in? This is Delcy Rodriguez, apparently just as bad as Maduro, and the US president basically saying, we're going to run the country, you know, me and my mates Hegseth and Marco Rubio and Stephen Miller are going to run the Venezuela for the time being. No time at all for the Nobel Prize winning opposition leader, who has basically said, I'll share my Nobel Peace Prize with you if you let me back in again. Does any of this add up to you as Donald Trump being concerned about narco-terrorism as opposed to just wanting the oil?
Well, it seems like it's probably a bit of column A and a bit of column B, and it's quite willing to allow the international community, people within Venezuela and other troublesome, as he would see it, countries, assume the worst. So when he came out and said we're going to run the country for a number of years, I mean, that, if he really is intent on doing that, would be an albatross around his neck. This is an enormous country, far, far bigger than Iraq, and we all know how that turned out. And also a country in which you haven't got a regime that's been displaced and ready to be replaced with something else. And he talks about we're going to get it to the point where the oil industry is back up on its feet. Maybe we'll be siphoning off some of that, who knows, keeping it very vague. That would take years and years and years and a huge amount of investment. You can't just suddenly create 21st century oil platforms at the snap of a finger. So it seems like, and this is only really a guess and speculation, because you have to read between the lines with Donald Trump, is that, as with many of his operations, he wants to get in and get out. You know, you drop the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan, you take out Soleimani, the Iranian general, you know, hit the Houthis, but then you get out. Because anything else would be even crazier.
We're not good at nation building in the West, and you can't build democracy.
And that's where I guess that the Vice President Rodriguez comes in, because there's been a lot of reporting now suggesting that she was, via other intermediaries, trying to cut some sort of a deal in recent weeks, and that she's seen as someone who could basically, the regime continues with a more pliable person at its head.
It's not necessarily going to get that much better for the Venezuelan people in the near future, but, you know, we shall see. Well, look, let's bring it closer to home, because let's talk about what's happening in terms of the reaction to these threats to Greenland. He's also made threats to Colombia, he's made threats to Mexico, to Canada, you name it. But no one really thought, you know, he's going to, you know, make Canada the 51st state and all of that. But Greenland, I mean, a population 56 6,000, part of the Kingdom of Denmark. It basically has the same status, diplomatically in terms of its relationship with Denmark as, say, Scotland has. It can run its own affairs, but foreign affairs and defence run by Denmark. It is part of the territory of Denmark, which is an EU member, but also a member of NATO. The warning from the Danish leader and other European leaders is, basically, if you seize Greenland, that is going to be the end of NATO. Now, that's a question I'm going to be asking our audience today, because, as you know, you can always get in touch about anything. You're in charge of those phone lines. But with European leaders warning Donald Trump that any attempt to seize Greenland would spell the end of NATO. I want to know what your reaction is to that. I'll get to Thomas in just a moment. But give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls, as you know, charged at the national rate altogether now. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. But, Tom, a lot of people may just say, look, I don't care. Greenland is so irrelevant to me. It is definitely relevant strategically to the United States, but, it's a territory of an ally country. Yeah. What's the issue? There are defence strategic concerns, not just also the mineral reserves and the like, but in terms of China and Russia and their sort of making inroads around the Greenland territory and the risk to America from them. And they are a hostile nation, rogue states. But would it be the end of NATO? And what would the implications for us be?
Well, if you think about the prospect, and I think it's an unlikely prospect at the moment, but who knows, of the US trying to strong arm or even potentially by force take territory.
Wouldn't need much force, realistically.
Well, it's not a lot of people there, as you say, but nevertheless, it's something where, with a NATO nation, what could that possibly do other than unravel the whole alliance, or at least put it under severe strain? I do wonder how much of this is basically a bombastic opening salvo in what would be more of a kind of deal negotiation, which Donald Trump would be keener on. And I just don't understand, particularly where Greenland is concerned, why the US administration is so willing to do this in such a out there kind of fashion. You are talking about allies, you also are talking about sovereign territory, which, as you say, is nominally part of Danish territory, but also has its own independence. And if you listen to what the Greenlanders are saying, which surely should be a fair amount of the focus here, yes. They don't want anything to do with this. America has a base there already. There's scope to expand that, not least if they didn't continue to act in such a bellicose fashion. It is strategically important, as you say, not least because the Arctic is going to become much more of a kind of battleground vis-a-vis Russia and China as the years roll on. But why they're doing this, other than to just sort of throw their weight around and to show that America is back, I don't understand.
And we've seen this again with Mexico and Canada as well. And I think, look, it's been fascinating debate. And Keir Starmer's under a lot of pressure from his left-wingers, the backbenchers, the usual suspects, Emily Thornberry's and others, basically talk about, you've gone on about, international human rights, you've gone on about international law. I mean, good God, we have to give away the Chagos Islands because some court that has no bearing on us whatsoever thinks that we should. International law is all he talks about. And then, it's up to the Americans to justify what they did. Haven't really got a problem with it. But there is the case that Britain nor the UN recognised the Venezuelan government. This was a dictatorship. This was an unelected government. They had elections which they they were lost by Maduro, and he stayed in power. There is no legitimacy to that government whatsoever. That is very different from a democratic nation, a nation like Denmark, and its territory in Greenland. That's a very different prospect. And I find it fascinating how many people don't see that there is a big difference there. What do you make of that justification from Donald Trump? It's like when you're dealing with Maduro, you're talking about, a narco-terrorist. You're talking about somebody who's not only killing his own people, impoverishing his own people, deeply corrupt, but also somebody who has been basically funneling Colombian cocaine into America, working with the Iranians, the Russians and the Chinese. Working with the Iranians to fund Hezbollah, funding, weaponry, money laundering and drug dealing, out of Lebanon. Again, Lebanon's a huge source of international drug supply. Again, it used to fund that terrorist organisation. What happens on the other side of the Atlantic and what happens on the other side of the Med is still impacting our countries right now. I want these people taken out. I want him out of office. I'm really happy with what he's done. does that mean that we would let him get away with doing it to any country?
When it comes to war, conflict, intervention, what have you, I think we've got to get out this trap of looking through it through this purely legalistic lens. Like, would Iraq have been any less disastrous if it had got the UN sign-off? I mean, that's an absurd proposition. Similarly, where this is concerned, I think what we've got to judge this by is, what are the aims here? Is it legitimate by the kind of norms of just war and conflict? And do we think it's going to have the desired effect? As you say, Maduro was utterly illegitimate. He was only in power because of rigged elections, corruption, enriching himself, all the rest of it. That said, particularly with the experience of Iraq, there are other questions you might want to raise before taking someone like that out, insofar as, do you create a vacuum which is filled by something worse? Is this going to have...
Which is probably why they've left the same party in power.
Quite. Is there going to be unintended consequences? Is it ultimately better to allow for people like this to be deposed internally, whether that's by military or people on the street, what have you? All of those questions are completely fine and important to raise. This legalistic thing, I think, is just an excuse to not have those difficult questions, and also to just it just becomes a stick with which to beat certain decisions.
But also,
you
and I
dislike.
think you and I disagree on the Iraq War, but people's argument about the Iraq War was illegal. It's illegal because the UN didn't sign off on it, because permanent members of the Security Council include Russia and China. I mean, I'm sorry, excuse me if I don't give two figs what Russia and China think about the morality or legality of anything. And what I find utterly fascinating at the moment is this talk about this rules-based international order, as if, it's now broken. And now all these rogue states can act with impunity. I mean, sorry, Putin invaded Georgia, Crimea, Ukraine as a whole, while we had a rule-based international order. Assad was, murdering his own people while we had a rule-based international order. Iran has waged terrorist war on the West while we've had an international, a rules-based international order. I mean, by the way, also, when Argentina invaded the Falklands, where was the UN then? Where was the help from our allies then? Because I don't recall us getting any help, even I think from America, even though you very, very, very late in the day. It seems to me to be just very, very clear that this is an absolute farce. This idea that we have to set the standard for how everyone else should behave. The rogue states will behave however they want to behave, and in whatever way they think they can get away with. China will invade Taiwan if they think they can get away with it.
Quite.
Full stop. It's got sod all to do with any international law or any sort of UN Security Council resolution.
I completely agree. I found that whole discussion about what precedent does this set, what message does this send, absolutely facile. I mean, in a sense, of course, you should stand up to the principles that you claim to believe in, which is why I think Keir Starmer has got in such a sticky situation over all this. International law was the one thing he ever sincerely seemed to believe in, and now he's junked that because it was politically expedient.
But he's done that because it's in Britain's interest for him to shut up about it.
But he is precisely the sort of person who, if he weren't in government, would have been on social media saying, what message does this send to Putin's Russia? And that would have been his actual take. But yeah, the idea that people seem to have forgotten that Russia invaded Ukraine, so what they're going to do, invade it again as a consequence of what has happened there. And also the idea that, Xi Jinping is sat there thinking, I really do want to take back Taiwan. I did say I would unify the territories, but I live in terror of a communique or a legal writ from one of the international courts.
This is the joke.
We all know it's absurd, so let's now drop the pretense, regardlers of how we feel about the Venezuela situation.
Do you think the pressure from backbenchers, the Emily Thornberry, you're under more pressure Emily Thornberry sits on you, frankly, over this international law thing. Do you think that's going to be an issue for Keir Starmer? Can everyone stop sniggering at the back?
Stifling laughter. I don't think it will be an issue for him outside of liberal left politics. He's handed his backbenchers, the Green Party and the Lib Dems a stick with which to beat him, because he's already he looks like a hypocrite and he looks like he's weak in front of Donald Trump.
Might be some sticky dinner parties in North London.
Quite. But does the public care? No. But I think this is...
Public's largely, according to polls, public's largely opposed to this this invasion, though.
Which doesn't surprise me. And I think people also...
People are largely opposed to wars.
No, exactly. And I think for understandable reasons, people have seen them go wrong so many different times now. And also I think the public are correct to say that you can't... you've got to be careful before you do things like this.
But also, I think, again, we
cause
discussed it on the show yesterday, the mainstream media in this country has been very remiss in terms of actually talking about just how awful the Maduro regime is and has been. Starmer today is off in Paris. He's at yet another meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. Coalition of the Willing to do what over Ukraine? This, by the way, as he's preparing a post-Brexit bill to transfer more powers, sovereign powers from the UK to the EU, because we're going to have this thing called dynamic alignment when it comes to a lot of EU rules. This again, we're not backtracking on Brexit. No, he's not breaching his manifesto, but we are going to basically follow exactly the same rules as the EU, no matter what they impose, so that we can do what we're told by them, so we can have freer trade with the EU, and basically not be able to make our own laws on things. I'm pretty sure that wasn't what Brexit was about.
No, of course it wasn't. I mean, it's a worse deal than one could possibly imagine. I mean, if you're talking about dynamic alignment, following single market rules in even more sectors than we already do, but without any say over it by dint of not being members, it's a worse deal than we ended up with. It only really makes sense as a stalking horse back towards rejoining.
We know that's what they're going to do.
Of course, and similarly with the customs union thing, there's a reason that no one just joins the customs union. I mean, Turkey did, and it took them decades, and it was only supposed to be a stepping stone into joining the European Union proper, because it's a terrible situation. You have no control over your own trade policy, but you nevertheless have to put up with the rules being set and the deals being struck in Brussels. But I can't work out whether it is a stalking horse to remain, which I think even Labour are sensible enough, or most of them are sensible enough to think
they can't do it.
They can't reopen
that
wound. And of course they also can't do it in the amount of time that they're likely to be in power. But I also think it's just taken on a kind of identity for the liberal left. Like, we need to be closer to Europe because that makes us good people. It is somehow undoing the wrongs of Tory Brexit years without necessarily thinking about it for longer than 5 seconds.
I'd love it if we got, Marine Le Pen or whoever would be leading her party in power in a couple of years' time in France, the AFD in Germany. And would they still think that it was a good thing to be allied to the EU, which is apparently the font of all goodness in the world? Just finally, before we go to calls and a break, I just want to ask you about the West Midlands Police, because the leaders of both Westminster Police and Birmingham City Council are going to be grilled by MPs later today. They've been recalled, particularly the West Midlands police boss, over basically, the fact that basically he and his fellow police officers, the chief constable, they lied. They simply lied. This is a guy called Craig Guilford. They appeared at a Home Affairs Select Committee before, and they basically claimed, and they repeatedly claimed, this is all over the Maccabi Tel Aviv ban of that match in Birmingham against Aston Villa. And they basically said, well, we got all these warnings from the police in Amsterdam that these fans were really unsafe, they were going to cause troubles, and that's why we banned them. It's now emerged quite categorically, and they claimed we spoke to Jewish community leaders, and they're like, okay, they didn't speak to Jewish community leaders. That was they specifically named people who said, you never spoke to me, and no communication with you whatsoever. They also said they had this information from the police in Amsterdam. Amsterdam police said, that's not at all what we told you. That simply never happened. They've given the exact opposite evidence, both in public and in private, that is very, very clear, saying that the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were not responsible for what was basically called literally a Jew hunt, a match there, which led to a huge number of convictions. And by the way, none of those were the Tel Aviv fans. And they basically they basically claimed they've had evidence for this choice, this ban, when it turns out they decided to ban the match and then decided to come up with some evidence. And they decided to ban the match after talking to various different imams at different mosques, including mosques which have hosted blatant hate preachers and anti-Semitic ranting preachers. There's no doubt at all. This guy, Craig Guilford, the Chief Constable of Westminster Police, he has gone to Parliament. He has lied, he's lied to the people of Birmingham, lied to the people of Britain. He's made up stuff on this, lied to Parliament, effectively, and he's still in his job.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. If you're going to do that, how can we trust you on anything else?
No, it's absolutely shameful. He should go. He should be sacked, forget resigning. He should be held to account, because this story shames not just West Midlands Police, but I think the whole kind of multicultural state, the way that this has worked. The fact that they essentially decided that the presence of these Israeli Jewish fans was so inflammatory to certain sections of the community, because they have to talk in, euphemisms when they're discussing this, that essentially we've got to ban them first and work out why later. the fact that they were then going around saying that the police in Amsterdam had said things to them which they categorically didn't say, that they spoke to Jewish community leaders that they categorically didn't speak to, and that they openly misled. And the fact that the details which have tumbled out since, which that in these private meetings they were saying we do not have any intelligence, but we're going to ban it anyway, essentially, utterly shamed. And because of the fact they came to the conclusion, understand, unfortunately, with some reason, that the presence of Israeli Jews in Aston, in Birmingham, given all that's going on in the world,
would be
those Israelis, those Jews in peril.
And why? Shouldn't we deal with the actual reason why?
Quite.
Again, this is sectarian politics writ large in our country, and it's happening right now. It's extraordinary. We'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show as well. Lots more to talk about. I want to hear your thoughts on all the big topics we're talking about today, and anything else you want to give us a call about. 0344 499 1000. But in particular, as leaders in Europe have warned Donald Trump that any attempt to seize Greenland next would spell the end of NATO. What's your reaction to that? Does it not bother? Do you not care? Do you think Trump's doing the right thing? Or do you think actually maybe NATO doesn't matter anymore? Would this be a huge risk to us? We've lived under the peace umbrella of NATO for all these decades. Give us your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Get your calls up next. This is Talk.
I have confidence in the Conservatives, and I have confidence in the energy and combativeness of Kenny.
But the public don't seem to be. The public don't seem to agree with you.
Let's see.
Now, Raw soap opera meets the Epstein files.
Prince Andrew's ties to Epstein already represent one of the monarchy's greatest reputational meltdowns.
This 10-page birthday letter you wrote to Jeffrey Epstein makes a pretty cringeworthy reading.
I find them very embarrassing to see.
First convicted, first indicted, you continued a business and personal friendship.
It was not a business
Not a business relationship.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's 10:30. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's get straight to your calls. Robert is in Northumberland. Robert, you want to talk about, would the end of NATO be spelt if there was a US invasion of Greenland, which of course is part of Denmark and NATO member? What do you want to say about that, Robert?
Well, it always drives me nuts when they talk about NATO, because when the Falkland Islands were invaded, the United States remained neutral, and most of the European nations took the side of Argentina. Argentina, didn't
now,
they?
can I point out? I've just been told, and it's a fair point. I hadn't remembered this. Was that actually NATO has a geographical area it covers, North Atlantic and Europe, rather than the whole world, and Britain didn't actually invoke Article 5.
Oh,
so there we are.
See. Oh, I didn't know that.
No, exactly. I mean, to be fair, I think I was in my second year at secondary school then, so that's my recollection. But they didn't offer us. There was no support. I mean, even if they didn't use NATO, there was certainly no support from our allies, was there?
Oh no, this country was totally alone, and it's always going to be that way, I think, really.
Yeah. But we still need, we still need NATO. I mean, again, as much as we trust, like if Russia did decide to let go into the Baltic states, do you think America, France, Britain, Germany would step up for the Baltics? I'm not sure we would.
No, they wouldn't. Of course they wouldn't. No, there wouldn't be enough public desire for that, would there?
Yeah,
I don't think.
So you're not. Do you think that what Donald Trump did in Venezuela was okay? And what do you think about Greenland? And what do you think it would be okay if he did act there or not?
Well, Greenland, that's another matter, isn't it, really? But Donald Trump was certainly right at the moment, wasn't he, when he said we could do with some global warming. That's what we could do with.
Well, we'd all be better off with global warming. I'm hoping it's all true. Robert, thanks for your call. Appreciate that. Cindy's on the line. She's in Michigan, in the States. A very good morning to you. A very early morning for you, Cindy. Morning.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much for taking my call, Julia.
Always good to hear from you.
With you.
Oh, we love having you. Love having you call in. Listen, first of all, did you approve of what Donald Trump did in Venezuela?
Yes, I did. And I want to say about Greenland, I don't believe for 1 second that he would do anything by force to Greenland. I think what he's trying to do is put Putin, China, and Russia on notice, because they would love to get their hands on Greenland. So, and if they did get their hands on Greenland, we'd all be screwed.
Yeah, I mean, it is strategically important. There's no question at all that part of the world is becoming increasingly significant, isn't it, in terms of minerals and oil and the like?
Yes, it's getting serious. But I truly don't believe he would do, like, storm Greenland. We're gonna invade you or anything like that. I really don't.
I know. I don't see that coming. But do you feel any sense that that Donald Trump is just like totally ignoring international norms and laws? Have you got any concern about that at all?
No, because I don't believe that anybody really. I don't believe in the international law. I don't think that anybody's really ever concerned about it.
I'm with you on that. It doesn't exist unless it can be enforced. And basically, if you're one of the big players, if you're China or if you're America, can't really be enforced.
And also, when Obama went and snatched Osama bin Laden, the world didn't have a problem with that.
Oh, no, there were a load of lefties over here who said outrageous it was. There were genuinely people who were outraged here that he'd been killed. I mean, God, I'd have killed him with my own bare hands quite happily.
Right?
I mean, I think any right-thinking person would. But there we are. No, you'd be amazed.
In America, people were jumping up and down, celebrating.
Yeah. That's because a lot of you are sane. We've got a bunch of numpties over here. What can I say? Cindy, you have a great day in Michigan. Far too early in the morning to be up. Thank you so much for calling us. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking more about, the rules-based international system. What plan have we got for the future of that? And is Keir Starmer under pressure on that? Oh, yeah, small matter of, are we undoing Brexit? This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Let's get to my next guest. He's political editor of The New World. James Ball joins us. Happy New Year to you, James.
Happy New Year.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So I must ask you first of all about Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro appearing in court yesterday saying, I'm a prisoner of war. The Americans say, well, actually, you're a narco-terrorist and we've gone in and seized you under, because you're a fugitive from justice. Was Donald Trump right or wrong to do that?
I mean, he was wrong to do this, but let's be honest, none of us should be shedding a tear over Nicolas Maduro. He's a tyrant, he's a thug, he's broken far more laws than anyone else has. I won't be shedding all that many tears.
I don't understand this view. So it was wrong to do it, but it's the right thing. I don't understand. It's either right or wrong.
I don't think it works like that, though. There's a lot of dictators in the world, and we try and have some kind of system. You can't say that the law should apply to Maduro but not to Trump. If it was illegal to take him, then you have problems down the line.
No, because Donald Trump is a democratically elected leader, and
yes,
Maduro
but he was
is
democratically elected by the people of America, not the people of Venezuela.
Yeah.
America's jurisdiction doesn't extend globally.
Well, it does actually. They kind of decide that themselves.
Well, at that point, you've just given up and you've said might makes right. You know, he isn't elected by the people of Venezuela.
I haven't given up.
By the people of Europe.
I recognise the reality. Yes, might rules. End of. Full stop.
Well, Maduro had the right to rule Venezuela by that system. No, he did.
Well, until someone else came along who was stronger.
Yeah, but that seems to be the system that you're going for. And
I'm not going for it. I'm just recognising that is we don't have a rules-based international system because not everybody obeys all the rules because the bad people don't obey them. So all the good people supposedly obeying them really just makes us look like fools because this ain't going to stop China invading Taiwan. It didn't stop Putin invading Ukraine, and it won't stop any other of the mean, the bad dictators doing what they want to do. So if it's a good thing that he's no longer in power and he's going to be tried in court, he's not just being shot in the head. He's being tried in a court in America, then surely that's a good thing.
I mean, your logic there is the same logic that goes because the police are rubbish at stopping people mugging phones. We should both go out after this and nick a few iPhones. This is the logic of the bottom. I mean, I go against this on pragmatic terms. Point to me where we've had the US remove a dictator and it's gone well for anyone in the last 30 years, 50 years, 80 years. I think World War II was maybe the last time it worked out.
That is a fair point, but that's a different argument.
Well, no, I will say we shouldn't do it because it doesn't work, because there's no plan. This looks as good as it will ever look today, and even 40% of Republicans don't like it today.
Okay,
this has no mandate,
Venezuelans seem pretty sodding happy about it.
Some Venezuelans are very happy.
Most Venezuelans are happy about it, by all accounts.
If you look at the street protests, there's huge pro-Maduro ones
well,
because
of course,
they're
because
always
you're not going to be punished for doing that, are you? But you will be punished by the authorities in charge if you go against them. What do you make of Keir Starmer refusing to say whether the capture of Maduro broke international law or not? Yvette Cooper made a statement in the Commons. People are saying the Prime Minister should have made a statement, but the Foreign Secretary was there. But and she's gone perhaps as far as perhaps we would expect her to go in terms of, she said that the UK doesn't recognise the new Venezuelan government, but reality is, we didn't recognise the old one because we knew that he was not democratically elected. But should Keir Starmer sort of, if he is so obsessed as he claims with international law, should he say, I don't agree with this?
I think he's tied himself in a knot on this one, hasn't he? And I don't know why he's done it. I can completely see the logic of going, we need the US to be on board with Ukraine. We can't have them suddenly going, screw you all. So we're going to have to stay close, stay quiet, and suck it up. But if you're going to do that, and annoy lefties like me, if you're going to do that, why put in the statement that international law is really important? And they've done a classic Labour thing of go, we'll put in the statement that international law is really important, and then spend 3 days not answering whether or not we think this follows international law, even though everyone knows it doesn't. I mean, the US is barely trying to say it does. Why do that? They've done the classic situation of just locking themselves into a line that pleases no one.
They're kind of the view, I think, that it's not about an international law. It's about criminality, and that we are talking about a narco-terrorist who's in cahoots with, the axis of evil, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, drug running, helping to fund Hezbollah and terrorist attacks by Iran. I mean, what's not to like, and therefore that he's been caught banged to rights. I mean, on behalf of people who don't want to be blown up when they go to a concert or get on the tube, I'm all in favour.
I think when you start doing unsanctioned, unreasoned, without any sort of support, foreign ventures like this, you don't reduce the risk of terrorism, you dramatically increase
no. When you say support, basically, if this had been agreed to by the UN Security Council, including Russia and China as permanent members, then it would be legal and okay. That's what you're saying.
Come on.
That's what you're saying.
Let's be honest, the UN Security Council is a joke, but this isn't even legal under US domestic law. This is absolute nonsense. And so this is just Trump liking a foreign adventure and liking to look like the big man. I don't think we have to I don't get the people going 4D chess. He's sort of planned this as some major oil industry thing. As far as I can tell, the oil industry is going, oh, crap, we're going to have to go in this now. We don't want to go into Venezuela. This won't work. So I just think
that is what they're saying at all. They just want more assurances that their assets aren't going to be seized again.
Well, yes, and how does that assurance happen? Who defends it? Who backs it up?
I think the point is America is saying that they will defend it.
And what happens when Trump's presidency ends? Where's the track record of US investment in Venezuela?
That would be a criticism of any subsequent president for not doing that.
Well, I think that's why you make a plan before you suddenly invade and say you're running a country, isn't it?
What do you make of the threats to Greenland, of course, which is a territory of the Danes, who, of course, not just members of the EU, but also members of NATO, and that claim that, from the Danish Prime Minister, this would be the end of NATO if there were invasion of Greenland.
I mean, it feels like a statement of fact, doesn't it? It's complete bonkers. It's complete insanity that the US wants Greenland. Again, it is people having to try and put on some form of sanity or reasoning for what looks like an increasingly deranged and dictatorial president. There is no reason for the US to seize Greenland for security reasons. There's a reason it's never been on the agenda till now, and watching people having to try and backwards justify it because they like Trump is bizarre. The mental gymnastics involved are quite elaborate.
Okay. I mean, I don't see any justification for them invading. Absolutely not. It would be unacceptable to me, a democratic state. However, there are massive strategic concerns about the inroads being made by China and Russia, again, not just in South and Central America and Africa, but also in Greenland as well.
I mean, you usually deal with that by strengthening your alliances and strengthening your relationships. Greenland's had a very long history of allowing US bases, allowing US espionage efforts. Yeah. There's an amazing effort. The US tried to stage its nukes there once on a weird underground train, and turned out that icebergs move, and they hadn't factored for that. Turns out that that's a bad idea with nukes. So Greenland has put up with quite a lot of US security madness in the past, would in the future. It's not going to get easier when you're constantly threatening them. I mean, if there's a risk, it's that.
All right. Let's also talk about the protesters we've had back here. We had them, in America. We had them in Venezuela on both sides. It is extraordinary how much you've seen the people who were, one minute it's all free Palestine, suddenly, swapping their flags for free Maduro flags, and basically anything that's sort of anti-Trump, anti-America, anti-imperialist. If Trump's against it, they're on the side of it. But I mean, does this tally, given the subjugation he's put and the degradation he's imposed on the Venezuelan people? In fact, he's a drug trafficker. I mean, cause of an awful lot of evil in our world.
It does feel a bit selective, as if human rights abuse has only become visible if Donald Trump or if the West is involved. The very little outrage over Sudan, very little outrage over, what's happened post-Afghan fallback, Iran. Yes, it's a horrible double standard. It makes no sense. And Maduro, again, I kind of could not care less about him. He's done far more abuse than will ever happen to him. As you say, in many ways, it's more than he deserves. It just doesn't make it a good idea.
long term. Let's talk about something that is or is not a good idea. You and I disagree on this. Your political editor of the New World was called the New European. I mean, basically, as far as you guys are concerned, you know, the font of all goodness and light in the world is the European Union. You love a Brussels bureaucrat more than life itself. There's no doubt at all that our Prime Minister is a massive Ramona. He was a shadow Brexit secretary, spent 3 years after the 2016 referendum, gave a clear statement of the view of the British people, trying to undermine that view. Apparently, we just didn't really know what we were voting for because we were all a bit thick and a bit bigoted. He tried to have a second referendum to undermine that one before it even been imparted. Well, now he's basically going to go for what's called dynamic alignment with EU rules when it comes to agri-food, energy, you name it, where we're basically going to follow all of the rules of the EU so we can keep up and keep alongside, handing over the powers of our own elected representatives in Parliament and our own government to make our own rules as suits us. Is this basically ending Brexit by the back door?
I mean, I really wish Starmer was this arch pro-Remainer that you guys sort of think he is.
You think he isn't?
He was for a while, but God, they've sort of endlessly committed to red lines that I think are counterproductive. I would like us back in Europe. I don't think it's on the table.
No, we're in Europe. We're in Europe. We're in the continent of Europe.
I would like us back in the EU bloc. I think we have lost power. We have lost influence. We have really, when we need a new security alliance, when we need new relationships, we are on the periphery when we need to be in the centre.
You think
and that is bad.
We're leading the way on most of the major issues.
We're not even in SAFE. We're not even in the EU procurement stuff for this. We are on the edge of the strategic alliances, despite being one of two nuclear powers in Europe.
If and when Putin decides to go for anywhere else in Europe, they'll all be looking to us. Don't you worry.
Oh, they really won't, because come on, we can barely manage to. We can't build a tank that works at the moment. You know, we are not at the cutting edge of security. We've neglected this a
We're
long
way
time.
ahead of most of the European countries.
That is true.
I find it I find it absolutely fascinating that you think that we're sort of so out in the cold. I mean, quite apart from the fact that we've got international trade deals with countries like India, we've got a better, well, if it ever actually happens, better tariff relationship with the US than the European Union managed. We kept being told all the power the European Union had, we'd have better deals with countries. Well, that's not been proven to be the case at all.
Well, where's these better deals post Brexit? You know, as you said, the key thing with the US one is where is it? The India deal seems to, I mean, it amounts to very, very little when you actually add up and look at it. Trade tends to be about who is near you. We are surrounded by EU nations. We don't have a neighbour that isn't in the EU, and most of this stuff is about goods. The dynamic alignment stuff that we were talking about, in practice, if you don't want checks on the border, you have to line up. The products have to match the standards of who you're selling them to. We have decided that's easier if we just have those standards. That's a choice we have made for
ourselves. If an American company or an Indian company or a Chinese company want to sell to the EU, they also have to do that. But that's up for that company to do that. It doesn't mean that our whole country has to align with EU rules because some companies are selling to the EU.
But they get checked as they go in, whereas we are much more integrated with them. We have traditionally sold a lot more to them, and this is essentially something we have decided will be a simpler way to be able to trade with them. And
you say the government has decided, but
yes.
But handing over our right to make our own laws about these things was something that British people decided in 2016.
Well, the difference is this isn't sort of in a treaty. This isn't bound forever. A new government can change it at any point that they want. And let's stress that with time limits, dynamic alignment was what Boris agreed in his Brexit deal and at each other stage.
For a short period.
Because it turns out that at each point you would end it, we will lose a lot of trade. We will have a new set of delays and issues at the border. And everyone's looked at it and gone, there is no benefit to not aligning.
Only because the EU creates that. Bearing in mind, the EU is where we got the horse meat in lasagnas from. So let's all stop pretending they make proper checks when they choose not to. James, we'll have to leave it there. Covered a lot of ground. Political editor of the New World. Thank you very much. Quick reaction from Tom Slater to that.
I just don't know why Labour rights people on the Liberal left still clinging to this. The idea that the EU is the answer to all that ails us economically is obviously nonsensical. And also, why would you want to reopen that democratic constitutional wound again just because you get a warm feeling?
They think it's bad for the right. It isn't. And also, there was a referendum, we discussed it on the show yesterday, 100%, I'm telling you right now, but one of the options, one of the requirements will be we have to join the euro. British people are not going to join the EU if they have to be on the euro. Full stop, not going to happen. I'm like, We want another referendum. Bring it on. It'll be so much fun. And we'll be at the forefront of that campaign. 10:51 is the time. We'll also be at the forefront of the campaign to please help our pubs because they are struggling. Thousands going under, and it's largely down to government policies. Well, Rachel Reeves is basically blocking new financial support for pubs. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
I have confidence in the Conservatives, and I have confidence in the energy and combativeness of Kemi.
But the public don't seem to be. The public don't seem to agree with you.
Let's see.
Now, the Royal soap opera meets the Epstein files.
Prince Andrew's ties to Epstein already represent one of the monarchy's greatest reputational meltdowns.
This 10-page birthday letter you wrote to Jeffrey Epstein makes a pretty cringeworthy reading.
I find them very embarrassing to see.
First convicted, first indicted, you continued a business and personal friendship.
It was not a business
Not a business relationship.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:55 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk right now about pubs and the plight of pubs, which we were told was going to be tackled by Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, at the last budget. And not only did she not make their lives better, she made them worse. Let's talk about what's happening with Justin Urquhart-Stewart. He's economist and chairman of the Regionally Investment Platform. Very good morning to you, Justin.
And you, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Look, we were promised, weren't we, that there will be this help for pubs. And then not only was there not help for pubs last time round in the budget, she actually basically imposed a massive increase on the cost of pubs. Tell us what they've been hit by lockdown onwards and why she's not offering to give them any help now.
Well, a series of issues have hit them, and this is where I show the lack of not just imagination, understanding of the Treasury and of her, because actually joining the dots together to see the impact of it.
Yeah.
So, first of all, obviously, we had the impact of what happened with COVID and everything relating to that. That's a much longer tail, but really what she hit them first of all with was, of course, the tax on jobs, the national insurance extra payments, and a secondary issue when we had the next budget. Blow me, there's another version of that going in, and she was told beforehand and afterwards, and seemed to be completely blind to the impact that would have. And we could see the impact because unemployment's going up.
Yeah. And the minimum wage massively hits.
The minimum wage always really annoys me when the government says, we've improved the minimum wage. You don't pay it. No, companies pay it. The fact you've actually put a tax on companies by saying you've got to now pay more, the lowest, the poorest people in your company more, well, that's fine. It makes it sound look like sort of Marley and Scrooge. And of course, companies aren't like that.
Yeah.
But
also, I mean, we're talking minimum wage now full time is over 26 grand a year. That's a heck of a lot of money, plus all the national insurance payments on top of that for the employer. But there's been a really big issue, hasn't there, with business rates, and we had some discounts to help people, the hospitality, vaguely through lockdown. But they've seen their business rates massively increase, and they're going to get a lot worse. What's happening there?
Well, what's happened there, and this is what was so iniquitous about it, the day she was announcing, saying, life is now going to get it better this is what we've done to try and help pubs and other outlets like that, not mentioning the business rate figures were coming out on the same day. And so people sitting there saying, yes, we're going to pay more, and then suddenly looking at, I mean, not just small figures, we're talking about for a pub, £10,000, £15,000, it depends where you are. And actually just a number of people I've spoken to in the industry who said, this is not a matter of putting the price up for a pint of beer, I'm out of it. I mean, this is like, we cannot afford to do this anymore, and the knock-on effect on that is going to be very dramatic indeed, for social areas and all those elements, but also again getting people to job. Where are people's first jobs? Often in the pub.
Absolutely.
Doing those sort of things. Because it's not just unemployment, it's the old NEET, so and those people not in education and all those elements together. These are record numbers.
Yeah.
So she's got the opportunity now, if she's got the parts of the anatomy to be able to do so, to be able to turn around and say, actually, we're now going to have a business-friendly budget, which is going to encourage small businesses, going to actually make sure it's good news to try and employ more people, because if we can't afford to pay them, so let's get you to pay them by encouraging you to pay more. And also, let's do something dramatic as well. The old argument over stamp duty, get the economy moving by allowing people to move houses, because that's where they spend more money, people earn more.
But it's so painful, isn't it? Because there's such a community aspect to pubs as well. We learnt that during lockdown. But again, we know Keir Starmer had phoned in earlier this week, basically sort of hinted that he'd be open to this. But we understand that the Treasury are going, no, we need this money in taxes. But of course, they'll end up with less coming in taxes. They're taking a bigger slice from a smaller pie, which is what they are going to keep on doing. And meanwhile, all of our local pubs and pubs that have been going for hundreds of years are just going to slowly all go under, and it's just such a massive loss to local communities, whether it's in the big cities or local, small villages. Absolutely painful. Justin, thank you so much. Always good to talk to you. Justin Urquhart Stewart. Sorry, it was short but sweet. Lots more coming up on the show. More on Venezuela, more on Greenland, more on what the hell is going on here, and why is Grok allowing people to put women and even young girls into bikinis on X? That's coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Heading towards 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's great to have your company. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm live all the way till 1. If you've missed the first hour of the show, or you're going to pop out, you miss any of it, you can always go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe and you never have to miss anything. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about what happened with the ousted Venezuelan leader, Nicolas Maduro, what's the implications are for NATO if Donald Trump does the same in Greenland, and also the thousands of pounds being spent to upgrade CCTV in the East Sussex town that's due to house 600 illegal boat migrants in the local military camp. But if you think there's a problem because of risk of crime, why are you putting them next to that small town? We'll be talking to one of the campaigners in Crowborough in East Sussex about that. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're also going to be talking about Grok, the AI on X belonging to Elon Musk, getting into rather a lot of trouble, calls for it to be banned, and indeed calls for the government to stop using X as its mode of sort of putting out official statements after Grok has, and it's done it to an awful lot of women, including me over the last couple of weeks. Basically, people can say, can you put that person in a bikini? It's nearly always a woman, and they're also allowing it to happen to children. Complete strangers able to say, well, look at this photo of this child on social media. Let's put that child in a bikini, because that seems like a normal thing, doesn't it? But that is happening on public social media, and we need to talk about it, so we will. That'll be coming up very, very soon as well. Delighted to say joining me for the whole show today is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Good morning to you. Started last hour talk about me ranting about everything being closed because of the snow. Yep. Can we talk about pubs closing as well? We've just talked to Justin Urquhart Stewart's an economist about this issue, but we were promised again and again there would be help for hospitality, weren't we? We know they're the most hardest hit when you get things like lockdowns, even when they were allowed to open, when they had that nonsense, arrows showing which way to walk to the toilet and tables meters and meters apart. They weren't even breaking even, but they were at least able to open. People haven't gone back to the pub like they used to. They're not, often a lot of people aren't, places like London and Manchester, they're not going into their offices, they're working from home a lot. So they're not going to the pub after work and doing that, or going to restaurants. And we are seeing that, and we've had train strikes the last few years, and you get a bit of bad weather, and they are being hit across the board. They are struggling. People are used to paying virtually nothing in a supermarket for their pint, rather than paying cost it costs for a pub to provide it. National minimum wage increase, the national insurance increase, and now business rates going up. All these promises of help, the exact opposite's happened. They're hitting them really hard. How worried should we be about this?
I think we should be really worried, because the pub sector in particular has been hammered for decades now. I mean, the smoking ban hit them pretty hard. You then think about the last...
I was in favour of that.
But it was
I couldn't go into pubs.
But things were moving, not to sound like a certain someone from the IEA, but things were moving in that direction anyway, in terms of, many non-smoking pubs and so on. But nevertheless, did hit them hard. A lot of pubs which only really existed just as a kind of, lean against the bar, kind of boozer, had to shut down. You then kind of fast forward, and you have, of course, the financial crisis, never good for hospitality. But now, particularly the last 5 years, that COVID, energy prices shooting up, general kind of economic chaos leading to more and more pressures being put on the sector. It's not alarmist to say that we could lose an enormous amount of our pubs basically for good. And as we've all seen from various high streets, when a pub closes and then quietly gets reopened as flats or whatever, they don't tend to come back. So I think we've got to take this seriously, not just because of the people who work in the sector and the people who, for no fault of their own, working very hard and yet are potentially going to lose their livelihoods as a consequence of avoidable policy decisions from government, but also their social role in British life. I mean, everyone, even politicians, will want to be quite sentimental about them, always want to be photographed pulling a pint in their local and so on and so forth. But they will go if they carry on down this track.
The foreign presidents when they come to visit to the pub. I mean, this is the thing, the rite of passage as well. I feel very strongly about, you want your 16-year-old in a pub, drinking illegally, I'm sorry you do, then rather than sitting at home scrolling, either playing on a video game or looking for likes on social media.
Or drinking illegally somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly, in the park. You know, seriously, I think they're a really important rite of passage. But, kids are sort of meeting with, they're meeting older people, and just, I don't know, just that socialising aspect of things. I think it's really, really sad. Bearing in mind also a big part of our tourism industry, which is a huge part of our economy. You're Americans, you're Chinese, they come over, they want to come to a British pub, they really do. Again, it's all part of the economic doldrums we're in. We've got a date for the next statement. I think it's March the 3rd we're going to hear from Rachel Reeves. I mean, never a good thing when Rachel Reeves gets up in the Commons, is it?
Doesn't bode well. I mean, it's funny whenever Rachel Reeves or Keir Starmer say, I'm not going anywhere and there's more to come. I don't think they realise how sinister that sounds to most of the country.
What did you make, actually, with Keir Starmer at the weekend? I was saying on the show yesterday, it took me 3 goes. I don't even think it was a jet lag, it was just Keir Starmer talking. But
I've exactly the same feeling.
I tape it, he's going to do an interview about half an hour. I mean, it felt like 4 hours. It probably took me 4 hours to watch it. Just, he's still talking. I always have a thing with Keir Starmer, it's like, 3, 2, 1, back in the room. Yeah. And he was saying, look, he's not going anywhere. He'll be in office this time next year. Do you think he will?
No, I don't think he does either. I think
I don't even think he cares anymore.
I've started to almost feel sorry for him.
No, this is the worst thing.
Exactly. It's like that kind of really late stage sort of Rishi Sunak sort of period where you think, God bless him, he's trying his best. But his best isn't good enough, unfortunately. And I don't think he believes that he's going to be around in 2027. I don't think his MPs believe he's going to be around in 2027, hence all the plotting. I don't think the public believes.
Is it a good idea for them to get rid of them? I mean, because at the end of the day, it is quite difficult to get rid of a Labour leader. Much harder than a Tory leader, but they did that deliberately, especially one in office. But also, crucially, be careful what you wish for, because if the Labour leadership is decided by Labour Party members, they vote for Jeremy Corbyn, and this time round they would vote for the likes of Ed Miliband. In fact, they'd probably vote for Zach Polansky of the Greens if they had their way. But my thing is, even if they went for the more sane options, the Wes Streetings and others, I'm not sure, given his stance on things like Palestine and trans kids and that actually Wes Streeting. I mean, if that's the sensible wing of the party, God help us.
I mean, that's the one thing that Keir Starmer has in his corner, which is, despite Wes Streeting going and putting some very punchy lines on the media, which gets lobby journalists very excited but completely bypasses most of the public who have much better things to do than listen to those kinds of things, there's no one really properly waiting there. I mean, Andy Burnham gets talked up. He's not even in Parliament, which would be necessary.
Well, there's talk of him getting a seat. And he's got his allies on the National Executive Committee. He could get a seat at the next local elections when they, at the same time, running a by-election if someone stands down.
Andy Burnham, this is the man who tried and failed to lead the Labour Party twice. This is someone who 1 minute was a sort of Blairite / Brownite, then suddenly has become a kind of born-again, soft left socialist now that he's in Manchester. I get that he is the sort of shiny new thing, and anyone looks more human and normal and relatable when stood next to Keir Starmer.
I think he's been a good mayor.
I'm sure he has.
That's a different job.
But at the same time, it's a different job, and also the fact that the Labour Party are going back to him now it tells you something, and I don't think he would survive.
Emily Thornberry. I want Emily Thornberry to be.
Yes, me too. Not because I wish the Labour Party well, though.
Just for the lols. Yeah. Just for the lols. Anyway, should we talk about international affairs? What do you make of Keir Starmer refusing to say that Donald Trump's capture of Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro, who pleaded guilty in a New York court yesterday, broke international law? Does it matter?
No, I mean, nothing.
Seems to matter to his backbenchers.
It does matter to his backbenchers, but I think it's because they're used to just purely kind of moralising on the international stage rather than thinking about it in any clear-eyed fashion. Is it embarrassing that Keir Starmer, Mr. International Law, the only thing he's ever seemingly sincerely cared about is this stuff, is now stuttering to condemn something which, let's be honest, in the framework of international law didn't really pass muster? Yes, of course, that's really embarrassing. But at the same time, what are people expecting him to do? To sort of rail against Donald Trump, to say that he's not going to let any of the White House ministers in the country until he reverses his course, particularly in the context.
That's what David Lammy would have wanted.
No, exactly. Is he going to chain himself to the railings outside the US Embassy, which is something a David Lammy before government, you can imagine saying, of course not. Not least because they want to get this deal over the line in relation to Ukraine, which obviously they're talking about in Europe today. So
everyone's tiptoeing around Donald Trump. Is this because you're now in the big league, and you're playing with the big boys, and the realpolitik hits home? Because actually, this whole notion, this is my thing, this whole notion of this international law is utterly meaningless. Laws only count if you've actually got someone who can enforce those laws. We can't really enforce any international law on China. That's why no one cares about millions of Uyghur people being basically in concentration camps and being forcibly sterilised. No, certainly the pro-Palestine lot don't seem to care about those Muslims. Not bothered by that about them at all. We can't really. Could America, could the West stop Xi Jinping invading Taiwan? Probably not.
And when people invoke international law at the moment, I mean, it's just, you think they're living in a different sort of era. I mean, the whole spell of it.
Well, they think a statement to the UN, that's the end of the matter.
No, exactly. They think that as soon as the tanks roll into a sovereign territory, that the number one thing you to do is get the lads together and write a nice communique. It makes no difference. We all know this. It's ridiculous. That is not to say that you should be relaxed about revisionist wars or imperialistic wars. The point is that you judge them morally, politically, and yes, there should sometimes be consequences for them, as we've seen in relation to Ukraine, the West getting behind Ukraine to differing degrees, backing them, arming them and so on and so forth. But that's not because they were legally compelled to do so. They felt morally, politically, geopolitically compelled to do so.
Well, I was going to say,
how you do it.
Morally is all very well as well, but there's also fundamentally it's about your own country's strategic interest.
Yeah.
That's what it's all. That's what Britain's always done, like the balance of power. We don't want one big power on the European continent, and that's how we've always operated our international foreign policy. But this is the thing. I mean, is there a big difference though? And this is where the Greenland issues come up. Donald Trump making threats, and he's made threats to Canada, to Mexico, to Greenland, to Colombia, to Venezuela, you name it, threatening everybody. There is a big difference, is there not, between him threatening, Canada and Mexico and Greenland, and more specifically Greenland in the last 48 hours, than threatening, Colombia or Venezuela and going in. We are talking about narco-terrorists. We are talking about criminal, dictators with no democratic mandate. That is a different thing. We've got this idea that there are sovereign nations, and that's this sort of. I mean, by the way, I love the fact the left only recognise a sovereign nation and the need to protect their borders when there's an invasion by Donald Trump. Yeah. They don't seem to mind about. They don't care about nation states whatsoever. Otherwise, then they want open borders for any illegal migrant who wants to rule or be part of the EU. They seem to change their tune on that. But at the end of the day, the idea that a nation state like Iran, like Venezuela, like Kim Jong-un in North Korea, that has the same legal right to sovereignty to be recognised and respected as a democratic nation state with a democratically elected government. But that's rubbish. They don't. I don't recognise the sovereignty of dictators.
I mean, there's clearly a distinction to be drawn there, absolutely, and it gets back to our point about how you judge these various interventions when stacked up against each other. That being said, I think there is something in being very cautious before you go into another country, take out its leadership, because it is an affront to sovereignty in one shape or form. Even if there is a lack of popular sovereignty there is such a thing as setting a precedent. But there's also the fact that we've seen from recent history that these things can unravel quite quickly, which in a way that isn't good, not just for sovereignty, but also for the people in those countries, that you create a vacuum that might be filled by even worse people. You can create civil war, more instability. So all of those things should be taken into account. And just because you don't like or even despise the leadership of a particular country, one has to be a little bit careful about how one does this. And also, but at the same time, I think it's quite clear that if you've got a state which is attacking you, or if you've got a state which is running some sort of criminal enterprise, the idea that there would be no consequences from that whatsoever is absurd. The idea that there won't come a point where some action might need to be taken is absurd. And what we can only really hope is, because as I say, I'm very nervous about this particular intervention, but I think the best that we can hope for is similar to other military measures Trump has taken in recent years. It's very get in and get out. It's make your point and then leave,
which
rather
I think,
than get bogged down to
what
the extent
we probably should have done in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, you want to make problems for us, then we will make problems for you. But I think they should have finished. I mean, frankly, Iraq. There should never have needed to be an Iraq war in 2003, because we should have finished it, under George Bush, frankly, first one round when it came to after the invasion of Kuwait. But there we are. In terms of Nicolas Maduro basically saying, look, I'm a prisoner of of war, his wife saying, "I'm the First Lady of Venezuela." Well, good luck that, sweetheart. I say you're not even the First Lady in your prison cell in Brooklyn right now. But Donald Trump then basically saying Greenland's next. The Danish Prime Minister, she has said, look, that will be the end of NATO. Greenland is part of Denmark, part of the Kingdom of Denmark. It's a democratic nation state, an ally of the West of the United States, part of the European Union, part of NATO. Would that mean the end of NATO if he did go in? Do you think he would go in?
I mean, it would be a crisis of it, certainly. I mean, the idea of Donald Trump sending the American armed forces to kind of forcibly take Greenland, I think, is genuinely fanciful. I think what is more likely here is that, as we saw, in the run-up to him,
I reckon I could
office,
take Greenland, to be honest.
Well, this
with
is
you.
the other. I mean,
I reckon you could take Greenland quicker than you could, I don't know, take Leicester.
I mean, it's a large. I mean, was it about 60,000 people?
56,000 apparently.
That's a large football stadium in this country these days. So it's that's a telling detail. It's obviously strategically very important. It's obviously very important to the Greenlanders, who do have autonomy and should have a voice in all of this, even though they're being kind of took out over their heads.
Well, it's the same way as Falklands. As far as I'm concerned, it's up to the people of the Falklands. End of.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing that we should remember. The question is how seriously, I suppose, we should take this. I think this is the opening salvo in a sort of negotiation. And it's difficult with Trump because he says a lot of crazy things, and sometimes they're meant for effect, and sometimes he means them, and sometimes he doesn't. I think that is part of the method. You keep people guessing.
And yet it does undermine
make things particularly stable.
It does undermine him when he's done something which actually I think will be for the good of the Venezuelan people, and whatever works out. I think it's going to be better than Maduro. And he does something which I think I'm perfectly happy to have this dictator taken out. I'm perfectly happy with this action. But then he makes threats against a democratic state. You think, oh come on, you're this is the thing. But this is my thing. I said, I would have voted for him. But he's not even been in office for a year. Doesn't it feel like he's been in office for about 5 years? It's just so Donald Trump dominated. But anyway, we shall see. I'd want to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call. European leaders, not this is Danish, others have warned that Donald Trump is making any attempt to seize Greenland would spell the end of the EU. Of NATO. What is your reaction to that? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Do you care? Do you not care? Does NATO have any meaning anyway? And is this just about realpolitik? And frankly, if you're the biggest boy on the block, you can do whatever you want. Is that the reality? And have we just been pretending that isn't, by pretending we've got a rules-based order and pretending the UN makes a difference? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all that. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Let's turn attention slightly closer to home. Prime Minister, he's barely in the country these days, is he? He's attending the Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris, hosted by Emmanuel Macron, meeting with European allies in a very snowy looking Paris by the looks of it. It's about, basically what they're going to do to sort of try and get a peace deal in Ukraine. Everyone keeps talking about a ceasefire. I don't think a ceasefire is the issue. I think the end to the war is the issue. I think a ceasefire in lots of ways would help Russia more than it would help Ukraine. But this coalition of the willing, willing to do what is the question mark. And there's been talk that we would actually have boots on the ground supporting peace, but everything really rests on, will America, and there are American representatives at one of these meetings for the first time, and they are, Jared Kushner and also Steve Witkoff, so people who are actually close to the president. But it's about America stepping up and being that backstop, basically guaranteeing Ukrainian territory. Do you think we've got any chance of seeing an end to the war this year?
It's difficult to say because of the facts on the ground. Russia, it's not entirely clear to me they want peace. And if they do want peace, they want it in such humiliating terms that it would never be acceptable to the Ukrainians or the Europeans, even to certain people within the Trump administration, I dare say. So it's remained an open question. As we've gone over the Christmas period, Russia has continued to take territory, it's continued to shell Kiev. And also, unfortunately, at this stage in the war, this very grinding attritional conflict, Russia seems to have the upper hand. So that's there. So the question is there any kind of countervailing pressure that can be brought on them from the Americans or anyone else? You've got an America which is very reluctant to get further involved. This coalition of the willing has always been... they've never said the quiet part out loud, but it was like they can only really do it with at least American air support, if not, much further support. So we're stuck in this loop once again. I think the future where Ukraine's security and defence is concerned will be primarily about how much can you build up its own domestic military, make sure that as part of this agreement there aren't those absurd limits being placed on it, by the Russian side, as were in earlier drafts of this peace agreement. But everything beyond that, I think Ukrainians have had to learn that whether it's the Americans or the Europeans, to be perfectly frank, the West have often been very flaky and two-faced allies, where Europe in particular, they're great at putting out tweets and having a press conference and saying
and hugging
Slava
people,
Ukraine,
big on hugging people.
But they don't back it up, and worse than that, they continue to buy Russian fossil fuels and therefore fuel the war machine. So we'll see. But it's been a mess from start to finish.
At the end of the day, again, I think the number one thing is, by the way, we need to get an awful lot of people off welfare in this country, and we need to get an awful lot more people into our military and spend a lot more on our military. We are in very dangerous times, and we need to be prepared for it. And you can't just go, I think I'll have a sort of some sort of super tanker ship or something. I can't. You're going to buy some fighter jets just off the shelf. No, these things take years and they cost many billions. We are going to have to get to grips with all that. Bearing in mind, we are a country, as we discussed a bit earlier, where we get a bit of snow and we apparently grind to a halt. Now, look, I'm looking out over London. We haven't had any snow. We're a bit frosty in the garden. Put the big jacket on today to get in, big coat on to get into work. Large parts of the country under full snow warnings, proper blanket of snow, people digging out their cars and really struggling. But once again, we've had loads of schools closing, loads of people told to stay at home because of the cold snap. I mean, can we take ourselves seriously as a country if a bit of snow? And I'm sorry, it's not like we've had 4 foot, for goodness sake. I mean, even if, again, you get to work late, right? I get that. Or maybe here's an idea: it's going to snow tomorrow. Maybe get up early, and allow for the fact it's going to take you an extra half an hour to get to work. But particularly kids at school, the message we are sending is, it's a bit difficult, so don't bother. Well, why are you all surprised when in 10 years' time those kids don't turn up to work on a Monday morning because it's a bit drizzly?
Yeah. No, I think I completely agree. It's subtle, isn't it? But it is a problem. We've become really risk averse. We've become
You've got a
really
sniffle.
kind of
Don't
coddling.
go into work. You might give everyone flu and they'll die.
And it trickles through, doesn't it? I mean, if it's so easy to close the school, you're sending the message that the school being open doesn't really matter too much. And
we know that. After lockdown.
And that works all its way up to how people approach the world of work and everything else. And it's just a bit pathetic, isn't it? I mean, it wasn't that long ago, and it sounds a bit sentimental and chocolate box, but people in Britain would kind of pride themselves on sort of, muddling through in difficult circumstances.
But also, again, it's
a bit of a sniffle and a bit icy out.
But also, not every teacher can get in to the school. OK, well, fine, not every kid can get in. There might be a reason. Some people can't, fair enough. But also, there are lots of people who do need to go to work. They can't have their kids off school. I just find it absolutely true. If it's too hot, if it's too cold, if it's too rainy, if it's too snowy, if it's too this, it's too windy. I mean, we've become so risk averse and so excuse orientated. The whole country is being run by the people who just can't cope anymore.
It's not even the snow. I mean, there's no snow in London, but schools are closing left, right, and centre, from what I hear, because for all the reasons that you've been talking about. So it's not as if this is an unusual weather event that we've become used to.
Winter.
It's dipped below zero. That's all that's happened, and yet everything is.
I mean, seriously, I'd love to hear from you. Your kid's school is closed, or you've don't not go into work, or maybe you are snowed. If you are genuinely snowed in, absolutely can't possibly make it to work, justify it. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Up next, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get your calls on both on NATO and, what a surprise, Keir Starmer, arch Ramona, is trying to betray us over Brexit. I know I'm as surprised as you are. This is Talk.
all these distractions like ID cards and so on. Look, they might make a tiny bit of difference around the edges, but that's not going to fix this thing. The people who are trying to come to the UK are very determined. It's now a multi-billion-pound criminal enterprise. The pull factors of the UK are always going to be huge. That's a compliment to our country. Millions of people around the world want to come to the UK. The only way you'll fix this once and for all is that everyone is detained and deported. And the sooner that Starmer comes to that conclusion, I don't think he ever will, frankly, but the sooner that he does, the better.
The UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:28 is the time. Let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Getting in touch about Greenland, the threats to Greenland from America, and the possibility of, well, the end of NATO if Donald Trump did decide to act in Greenland as he did in Venezuela, but also Brexit betrayal as well. Let's go to David, who's in Alva in Scotland. David, you want to talk about NATO and its future. What do you reckon?
Hi there, Julia. You're looking at Friday, David. I think Donald Trump's putting feelers out here to see who's going to actually really back him up. I don't think that the EU cabal will actually back him up. I don't think the British government, if you can call them a government, will back him up.
When you say back them up, what do you mean?
If something hit the fan, let's say, and the USA were really needing NATO or the UN or whatever to back them up. We know UN's just a cabal of...
Well, UN's a waste of time. We've got Russia and China. No, but when you say back them up, as in, if you think, what happens if the US did go into Greenland, so basically say, we're now taking Greenland, what do you think NATO's reaction would be, other members?
I think that's Mr. Trump just actually, well, I'd call him Sir Trump, to be honest. I'm putting the feelers out to see who would back him up, to be honest, because I don't think the way you've got this coalition of I don't want to say the word, but words with anchors, they are nothing.
Yeah.
They are nothing. They're just puppets on the WEF strings, to be honest.
OK, you're not impressed. David, I appreciate your call. Thank you very much. Just got actually a joint statement on Greenland. This is from that meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in Paris. So you've got the French President, the German Chancellor, the Italian Prime Minister, the Polish Prime Minister, the Spanish Prime Minister, and, of course, the Prime Minister of Denmark, and our own, yours truly, Keir Starmer as well, says that Arctic security remains a key priority for Europe and it is critical for international and transatlantic security. NATO has made clear the Arctic region is a priority and European allies are stepping up. We and many other allies have increased our presence, activities and investments to keep the Arctic safe and deter adversaries. Make it clear the Kingdom of Denmark, including Greenland, is part of NATO. Security in the Arctic must therefore be achieved collectively in conjunction with NATO allies, including the United States, by upholding the principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty, territorial integrity and the inviolability of borders. Talks about... these are essential, these are universal principles, and we will not stop defending them. The United States is an essential partner in this endeavour as a NATO ally, and says Greenland belongs to its people. It's for Denmark and Greenland and them only to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. Just asking you very quickly, Tom, those are very strong, very clear words. Basically, don't do it, Donald Trump. At the end of the day, they can't do anything to stop Donald Trump acting if he chooses. I think he would be wrong, and I would absolutely condemn him for doing so. It's a democratic state because poses no threat to America. But I mean, big talk, but they've got nothing to back it up with.
Oh, of course not. But at the same time, they can't not have given that statement, given the fact that you had... Yes, it was bellicose. Yes, there's question marks as to whether it was ever serious. But when you have an administration even making noises about taking, through some way, shape or another, sovereign territory that is under the jurisdiction of a European nation, it just doesn't, you can't not condemn it. So, it's a bit of pantomime, but these things are the stuff of international relations, aren't they?
Well, we're going to be talking about this with Matthew Bryser, former White House staffer, in just a few moments. First up, though, let's go to... First time I'm speaking to her in 2026. Happy New Year, Georgina in London. Very, very, very good morning to you, Georgina.
Happy New Year, my darling, and Happy New Year, Tom. I'm ringing in about Keir Starmer, as usual, about this Brexit.
Off you go.
Back it right. Well, from the very start of his prime ministerial term, Keir Starmer has been hell-bent on getting Britain back into the European Union, dropping not-so-subtle hints that it would be in the best interest of Britain to be part of the EU. Julia, the man is the Ramona incarnate. In fact, the fact that we had a democratic vote to leave the EU doesn't even compute with Keir Starmer, as he's never wanted us to have a sovereign nation, to have the capability to make our own decisions and our own laws without having to run to the EU before we make political movement. He wants to cozy up with his European brothers. He sees them as his strength, his backup, and he can then use them as an excuse when he makes decisions that the British public don't agree with. It's the perfect get-out-of-jail-free card for Keir Starmer. He already is wedging us back into the EU with his stealthy backdoor dealings, no referendums, no consultations with the people who pay the bills of this country. That's us, Julia, the taxpayer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you. I mean, he's going to do it by stealth. We're never going to get another referendum. I'd be very happy to fight that referendum. Got no question at all about that. The Brexit side and the not going back in again side would win. But they're not going to do it like that. They're going to do it by stealth, which is what they did to get us to the situation where we voted for Brexit in the first place. They did it all by stealth, and they didn't ask anybody. And when they did, they ignored the answers.
Well, that's absolutely right. This man's got no conscience when it comes to the ridiculous amounts of money it'll cost this country in making a decision to rejoin the EU on our behalf. A decision that goes against the 17 million British citizens, me being one of them, that voted for Brexit in the first place. It's about time that Keir Starmer realised that not only is he the most hated Prime Minister that this country has ever had the misfortune of having, but also he is working against and not for and on behalf of both our country and in its indigenous population. He continues to throw our good money, Julia, after bad. And you know what? I'm sick of it.
Yep, I'm with you all the way. Oh, it's just great to be back. Just to hear Georgina. As always, wonderful to hear from you. Happy New Year, my darling. Speak to you again soon, I hope. Always good to hear from Georgina. If you want to get on the line, have yours say 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Any topic we're talking about today, but we are going to return to what on earth is Donald Trump planning for pretty much the rest of the world with Matthew Bryser, former White House official, up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:37 is the time. Let's talk right now about what on earth Donald Trump is up to with Matthew Bryza. He's a former White House official working under George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and joins us to discuss this. Good morning to you, and a Happy New Year, Matthew.
Happy New Year to you, Julia. Great to be with you
Thanks
again.
so much for joining us. Look, just talk, he went into Venezuela at the weekend. It was an extraordinary feat. Seized Maduro and his wife. They appeared in court yesterday. I mean, that perp walk, the helicopters, everything, the full Hollywood treatment there. And we have Maduro say, look, I'm a prisoner of war. He's been indicted on weapons and drugs trafficking charges. We won't see that case realistically come to court probably for another year, assuming there isn't some sort of deal done. And he's basically put his Maduro's deputy, his vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, in charge, ignoring what should be the democratically elected leader, the opposition leader who's won the Nobel Peace Prize recently. What on earth is Donald Trump up to?
I think he's trying to figure it out. As we've discussed before, the goals of the threats and now the use of military force were never clear. Initially, it was all about stopping the flow of drugs from Venezuela into the U.S., but very few drugs were coming into Venezuela from
I understand about 20% of drugs coming into the U.S. coming via Venezuela.
That's a much bigger number than I'd heard. I mean, most of it comes from Colombia, but Venezuela, the drugs that are transited through Venezuela, mostly go to Europe and to some Caribbean islands. Now, maybe they're resold back into the U.S., but it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, Trump pardoned the former Honduran president who was sentenced to 45 years in U.S. prison for drug trafficking. So clearly that's not the goal. It's not regime change, I guess Trump is saying now. The goal appears now to be just to transfer out Maduro, put in his vice president, as you were just saying, Julia, to replace him, and then conduct a law enforcement operation against Maduro. I just don't see what it gets for the U.S. strategically, other than to send a powerful message to countries all over the world that President Trump's a tough guy and he's willing to use force to get what he wants.
Well, we're told, again, a lot of it is about the oil, and Venezuela has the largest known oil reserves in the world. But again, America is the biggest producer and exporter of oil in the world. Again, they don't have the heavy crude oil, which Venezuela has, which apparently is what all of the refineries are equipped for in America. I mean, so there's reasons there. But, I mean, none of it really makes sense other than that full strategic message to, the axis of evil, the Iranians, the Russians, the Chinese, who are very much closely involved in that Maduro regime in terms of the, narco trafficking, the oil, sales, but also, of course, funding terrorism throughout the Middle East and indeed the West via Iran and Hezbollah and the like. And again, I think a lot of people perhaps not aware of that role they played. What message do you think it does send out then? Do you think this changed anything? Because the bleeding hearters on the left are saying this is the end of the rules-based international order. This gives, the likes of Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin free rein to do whatever they want because Trump has done this. Or does it send out a message, if I'm not happy, I'm going to take you on and I'm not afraid to put boots on the ground? Which of those messages do you think is the stronger?
I think the latter one is stronger. I mean, and there's even more to it than what we've gotten so far in this discussion. I recommend that everybody who's interested in this go and read the U.S. National Security Strategy that came out a few weeks ago. In it, it says basically there's this new Monroe Doctrine, or as Trump calls it, the Don Roe Doctrine, which means two things. We all tend to focus on the Monroe Doctrine, meaning that the United States is saying all other powers should stay out and they cannot dominate the Western Hemisphere. But the other part of the Monroe Doctrine is that the U.S. isn't going to poke its nose on the European continent or in Asia. So what Trump is essentially saying is, I'm a tough guy. I'm going to use force in our hemisphere to do whatever I want. In the rest of the world, we're going to stay out of it. Like the 1815 Congress of Vienna after the Napoleonic Wars, the great authoritarian powers are going to rule the world. So that means China in the East and Russia in Europe. So it's not carte blanche for Putin or Xi to do whatever they want, because the U.S. retains the right to use military force. but it's sort of a wink and a nod saying, okay, that's your sphere of influence.
This is our house, that's yours. Well, in that case, that's not good news for Taiwan, and it's certainly not good news for Ukraine. We've got that coalition of the willing meeting in Paris, yet another meeting of the coalition of the willing to do what group. They've issued a strong statement on Greenland, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. But in terms of Ukraine, is there any likelihood do you think we are going to see, given this the first time we've actually had senior White House representatives at one of these coalition of the willing meetings, that we're actually going to see any sort of, basically US backstop for basically, protecting Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire, and basically saying we will actually provide military assistance to Ukraine if Putin goes any further?
Well, yes, but it depends on how we define that assistance. So it's clear the Trump administration isn't going to provide direct military assistance, meaning, U.S. troops on the ground or weapons anymore, unless Europeans buy them and supply them to the Ukrainians. But Trump has said that, the security guarantee for Ukraine in the future, that'll be Europe's job with U.S. support. And so they're going to have to define what that support is. What European members of NATO lack most militarily is stuff in the sky. So air defense, space-based capabilities, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, sensors, and airlift. So, moving lots of big stuff in aircraft. I think that it's likely the U.S. will continue to provide that support for the Europeans in terms of the security guarantee.
But let's face it, it doesn't go far enough, because the Europeans cannot provide a lot of that military might that is needed. What do you make of basically the threats to invade Greenland? Colombia next, Greenland next. Donald Trump, when he got into office, started making threats against Mexico, against Canada. We are talking about, the case of the three of those democratic nations, allied nations. We've had a joint statement on Greenland from the coalition of the willing, basically largely the European leaders, basically talking about how universal principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the inviolability of borders. They said we will not stop defending them. They say that basically Greenland belongs to its people. It's for Denmark and Greenland and them only to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. A very clear statement that they will not support and not, just turn a blind eye to America trying to seize Greenland, which is obviously a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. But realistically, if Donald Trump did decide to seize Greenland, is there anything the Europeans could do about it?
No, there's nothing they could do in terms of military resistance. And, as Stephen Miller...
Could they wag their fingers? Could there be a UN communique that they don't like?
Oh, there could be expressions of concern, yes. There could be those. But as Stephen Miller, the very outspoken deputy chief of staff of the president, whose wife posted that crazy meme of the American flag over being Greenland, Stephen said yesterday, Denmark colonized Greenland. Why do we accept that? And we're going to do whatever we want in our hemisphere. So it goes back to the national security strategy. People will argue about it being a violation of international law. But one thing we should keep in mind, when it comes to Venezuela, it is absolutely not clear that the Trump action violated international law.
No.
Because it's not clear that Maduro had sovereign immunity because he wasn't recognized as being legitimate. So it's complex. International law is complex.
I personally do not understand why people think that there is this sort of sovereign immunity, but also the idea that, we should give the same recognition in law internationally of someone who is a, fully corrupt, not democratically elected dictator, who's killed his own people, against a democratically elected leader of another nation state. These things are not equal.
Yeah. So in Europe, a generally customary law says that whoever is the head of state gets full sovereign immunity. U.S. is different. So there was a decision in 1989. The guy who became President Trump's attorney general in his first term, Bob R., wrote it. And basically it says, if a foreign leader is illegitimate in our mind, then U.S. law can allow that person to be extradited to face criminal charges in the U.S. And that's exactly what's happening. That was used for Manuel Noriega to arrest him, the former leader of Panama.
Well, look, we're still a bit unsure about the reasons for Donald Trump going into Venezuela. Are we sure now of why he would want to seize Greenland? What is the issue? Because it's not, Greenland isn't pumping drugs into the United States. It's not run by an evil dictator. I don't know what their oil situation is, but they definitely have natural resources. What is the reason why the strategic interest of the United States would require America to seize control of Greenland?
Number one, the Trump administration considers Greenland, technically it is part of the Western Hemisphere. And it's super close to Canada if you look geographically at a map closely. Number two, its geographic location is also very important for defending the Arctic and the northern parts of the Western Hemisphere. But number three, what you mentioned as well, there are a lot of critical minerals in Greenland, and the U.S. wants to get their hands on those.
It's really that simple. It's fascinating how much things are coming back to, you know, the stuff that's in the ground that is what really, really matters. It's almost like everyone's waking up to what the Chinese have been doing for the last 20 years with their Belt and Roads policy. But there we are. Matthew Price, great to talk to you, a former White House official. Thank you very much indeed for that. Thomas Hayter, just bring you in briefly. I mean, again, we're just coming back to realpolitik. I mean, everyone can talk a good game and you can put out a nice communique and say, oh, no. At the end of the day, you know, military might, economic power, availability of, key energy like oil. That's all that matters. That's how you can do what you want if you've got those things.
And I think we're just getting away from an era in which we can pretend that those things don't matter.
Yep.
In which we can pretend that the military power or economic power of a particular nation is unimportant because we have these other rules that we play by, that the national interest won't express itself because people have signed a statement or a declaration at one point or another. It's not to say that you can't sometimes it's necessarily a fantastic situation to be in, but you have to play the cards that you were dealt. And I think in a bit more realism in foreign policy can only be a good thing, even as we try to move towards a slightly more even way of playing
Absolutely. 11:49 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking about stories closer to home and why on earth CCTV has to be upgraded. It costs thousands of pounds to assuage local residents concerned about 600 illegal migrant men moving into a military camp just outside Crowborough in East Sussex. If they're all perfectly safe, why would you need to do that? Well, we'll talk about that with Kim Bailey, who's chair of Crowborough Shield. Up next, this is Talk.
These distractions like ID cards and so on. Look, they might make a tiny bit of difference around the edges, but that's not going to fix this thing. The people who are trying to come to the UK are very determined. It's now a multi-billion-pound criminal enterprise. The pull factors of the UK are always going to be huge. That's a compliment to our country. Millions of people around the world want to come to the UK. The only way you'll fix this once and for all is that everyone is detained and deported. And the sooner that Starmer comes to that conclusion, I don't think he ever will, frankly, but the sooner that he does, the better.
UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time. Let's talk about stories closer to home than Venezuela and Greenland. Let's talk about migration because, of course, turns out lots of people on the left are very, very concerned about borders when there are other countries not concerned about our own borders. And, of course, even with the horrifically cold weather we've got in the last few days, we've already seen migrants fleeing from France on those boats, suffering from hypothermia. Not my problem, I'm afraid, but there we are. And, of course, we know that once they're here, they have to be housed somewhere because we can't get rid of most of them. And we know also, we've been talking quite a long time now about the plan to house some 600 plus illegal migrants, all young men, mostly undocumented, in Crowborough at a military camp near the East Sussex town. Well, now they've decided to spend £15,000 to improve their CCTV after outcry from local people about fears for the safety, particularly of young girls and young women. But why on earth would they need to do that if all these young men are just, innocent men fleeing war and strife at home? Well, let's talk about this with the chair of Crowborough Shield, one of the groups trying to protect local people with the arrival of these men, Kim Bailey. Very good morning to you, Kim.
Morning, Julia.
Thanks so much. Very well. Thank you so much for joining us. I have to say, I find it extraordinary. I mean, we've got more CCTV in this country than almost any other country in the world. Doesn't seem to tackle crime. Is the idea that we're just going to film the men sexually assaulting 14-year-old girls and that's going to solve the problem?
I think the concern is justified by the town, and it's actually one of our Crowborough Shield members that's been fighting for the CCTV to be reinstated. So this is something that the town already had. Yeah. And in 2019, it was actually deemed that it wasn't needed. So the police had actually handed it over to Crowborough Town Council, where they had then said that they couldn't afford to fund it.
So basically the town was so safe they didn't need CCTV?
Essentially, yes. So now it's been decided. I mean, it was completely defuncted and decommissioned in 2024. So now, obviously, with the residents having concerns about these asylum seekers coming in, that they have agreed that there is justified and the money is justified, but the council are actually going to be trying to seek the money back through the Home Office.
Yeah.
So
because they're the reason they're going to have to put it. I mean, is that going to assuage your fears? I mean, you're leading a hell of a lot of just ordinary law-abiding, tax-paying citizens saying we don't want a load of illegal, undocumented young men living 20 minutes walk away from our town.
I mean, the key thing, Julia, is it's the government that are not engaging. So it's the unknown. We're being told this is what is happening, but then their same old rhetoric is, well, actually no decision's been made. So there's no impact assessments. No one actually knows what is going on. Yeah. So by having the CCTV reinstated, that's more about actually at least we can monitor what is going on. Hopefully it will act as a deterrent if they do come. Now, the Home Office, as I say, keeps spouting the same rhetoric. No decision has been made, although they've spent millions of pounds at the site. And obviously we've got all the fact sheets that they've released saying they are coming. So it's I think it's more about acting as a deterrent if they come. It's not going to stop anything, I don't think.
Well, no, I mean, I'm really, really not confident. Look, no one is saying that everyone who's arriving on these boats is going to be sexually assaulting young women or girls. However, one case is too many. We've had a damn sight more than one case. We've had convictions, and it's happening again and again and again. Young men from parts of the world where they simply do not, well, they're already criminals by arriving here illegally anyway, and many are actually escaping criminal prosecution in Europe, we discussed in the last year or so, but also coming from countries where they have a completely different attitude to the role of women and young girls and their attitude to on sexuality and the like. It is very, very worrying. I would be very, very scared if I had a teenage daughter living in that town. We know there's been lots of talk about, and we've spoken to other people on the show from your part of the world saying they're going to organise effectively a sort of neighbourhood watch. A lot of the men basically saying we will have walkie-talkies and we'll patrol to try and make sure that people are kept safe, especially school kids on the way to and from school. I mean,
again, Julia, though, that comes from this vacuum of information. Yeah. Home Office are not giving any information. Wealdon District Council, they haven't given us any information about actually where is the safeguarding, what security measures are being put in place, how are the migrants going to be managed, where are they going to be entertained, because there is nothing to do in this town. So this patrol group has been set up by a group of residents who again, are fearful of the things that you are saying. And actually, what can we do about it? Well, let's group together. That's essentially what they're doing, because there is so many failures coming from central government, from the local district council. It's just, like I say, a vacuum of information. No one knows anything. So the town are essentially stepping up and doing what they can and what they feel is needed.
I mean, again, it's extraordinary that local people should have to do that, and you can't feel that, because I don't think you will actually be safe. But again, we've had this whole thing, people, protesting outside, the Bell Hotel in Epping, and we don't want people in these hotels. And then they say, well, we're going to try and move people out of hotels, military camps. I think a lot of people thought, OK, well, a camp that's miles from anywhere and is all sealed and people aren't free to roam the streets, that's different from what they're proposing where you are, literally on the edge of the town, people free to come and go. But also the other plan is just basically put everybody into, local houses of multiple occupation and just hope no one notices, which I think is even worse than them being in hotels, where at least local people can know where they are. But this is just, this is just untenable to continue. We've had yet more people arriving in the new year already, despite the horrifically cold weather conditions. Do you see any end in sight, especially since the numbers have actually gone up since Keir Starmer's supposedly smashed the gangs rather than gone down?
Well, that's the key thing, isn't it? There's a root cause here, and that's not being addressed. So moving them from A to B to C, what was it? It was the asylum hotels, then we're going into barracks, and then I think the latest press is we've got loads of housing stock in council portfolios. Let's put them in there because it's cost effective. What message is it that this government wants to send? Because initially it was, we want to put them into barracks because it's unappealing, so this will stop people coming. But then in this next message, what they're saying is, actually, we've got some lovely homes that we can put you in. So the message is actually so confusing. You can't blame people for coming here when our government are saying, here, have a nice house.
And if we've got all that spare council housing, maybe some British families might need it too. Kim Bailey, look, we are all on your side. We really are. Chair of Crowborough Shield there. One of just the many, not far right. Ordinary local people just trying to keep their own local area safe and sound, and keep their girls sound as well. Look, we're going to be talking more about that, no doubt, many times more. Coming up, top of the hour, we're going to get the news. Then we're going to be talking more about Trump and Venezuela and more besides. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me, whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device. Great, as always, to have your company. Don't forget, if you've missed anything of the show, you have to go out, I don't know, dig the car out of the snow if you're outside London. We've got a bit of fog now. It was sunny earlier, but, let's face it, it's not officially snowing in this country unless it's happening in London. You know the rules, folks. Come on. But if you do miss anything, go to my YouTube page. If you hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. It's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Really easy to find. And now, coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about Venezuela and Greenland, and indeed that coalition of the willing on Ukraine and what they've had to say on the threat to Greenland from Donald Trump. We're going to also be talking about Elon Musk's X under fire for allowing users to ask Grok AI to generate non-consensual fake photos of women and girls in bikinis, including some very, very young girls indeed. I have to say, it includes me. You might want to look away when we show you those pictures. Anyway, that's all coming up. Plenty more besides, including actually going to talk about how on earth the Chief Constable of Westminster Police is still in a job, given that he has been now proven to have lied to Parliament, proven to lie repeatedly about the decision to ban the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from their Aston Villa match last year. He's being hauled before MPs once again today. We're going to talk about that as well. First up, as introduce you once again to the editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, who's been joining me throughout the show. Very good afternoon to you again. Just want to get your thoughts, just very briefly, on the conversation we were just having with our guest from Crowborough about, these migrants. Again, we could talk about international affairs or the economy or whatever it is, but you know what? The immigration issue ain't going away. We've already seen, we saw the figures at the end of last year that, we've had, it's not at the peak of 2022, but we are seeing, again, a massive increase in the number of people coming from France. No, they're not women and children. They're largely young men, undocumented. And we've got more and more of them here. And yet we've got, people being terrified of these people being in local hotels, in local homes, or in the local military camp. And also a new report from the Tories has shown that Labour is failing to build enough homes to keep pace with immigration, whether it's legal or illegal, showing net migration stood at 204,000 people in the year to June, but only 237,000 new homes were completed. And basically a third of all new homes that are actually built in this country are going to legal migrants. Now we also know a lot of them are going to go to illegal migrants just to get them out of those hotels so we all stop talking about them. What on earth is going on?
It's totally unsustainable. It's been unsustainable for a very long time, not just when the Labour Party came in. And I think what we've seen in Crowborough and what we saw in Epping with the protests outside the hotel and what we're seeing around the country now is that ordinary people are feeling compelled to sort of take matters into their own hands because the state isn't listening to them. They feel like the social contract has basically completely broken down, that the most fundamental responsibilities that a government or a local authority might have to the welfare of their citizens, to the welfare of the people who pay their wages, just doesn't count for anything. And therefore, quite reluctantly, and very peacefully, we should say, when it's not like there's vigilante groups popping up all over the place, these are just people deciding to look out for one another. People feel compelled to do that in a way that they wouldn't. It would have been inconceivable that you would have seen groups like this pop up even a few years ago. So it's a fundamental failure. I think, at the very least, our debate about this has shifted more towards the position of common sense and ordinary people, but the politicians are playing catch up and they're continuing to think that they can basically just tweak the current system to make it more acceptable, whereas what we need to do is rip it up.
Fundamental, but also their main solution is, could we all stop seeing it and talking about it as opposed to dealing with it? Right, well, I'm really interested to get your thoughts on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. 0344 499 1000. Give us a call on any of the topics we're talking about. Also love to hear your thoughts on European leaders warning Donald Trump that any attempt to seize Greenland would spell the end of NATO. What's your reaction to that? We had a statement from the Coalition of the Willing on Ukraine meeting in Paris, basically saying that it's for Denmark and Greenland and them only to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. Greenland belongs to its people. Big sort of statement there to Donald Trump. But let's face it though, can they match it with any action if he did decide to go into Greenland? Give us your call, your thoughts on a call. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Well, let's put all of this to my next guest, Conservative MP and former Security Minister Tom Tugendhat. A very, very good afternoon to you, Tom, and a happy New Year.
Hi, Julia. How are you? Happy New Year.
Very well. Thank you for joining us. Well, I mean, I'd best get your response, first of all, on Greenland, because that's a developing story. After the invasion with Special Forces troops on Saturday of Venezuela, the seizure of Nicolas Maduro and his wife, who appeared in court yesterday in New York on drugs and weapons trafficking charges. We've had those statements from Donald Trump saying, you know, Greenland could be next, really. We've had this joint statement from the French, German, Polish, Spanish, Italian and British and Danish leaders meeting in Paris, a meeting of the coalition of the willing on Ukraine, and basically saying, look, Arctic security remains a key priority for Europe. They say it's critical for international transatlantic security. They say that upholding the principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty, territorial integrity and the viability of borders is crucial. And basically they say that Greenland belongs to its people. They're basically wagging their fingers saying, don't mess with Greenland as part of Denmark. But can they back that up if Donald Trump does decide to go in?
Well, perhaps not, but it's a bit of an odd one, really, because there's a Second World War treaty that gives the United States the permission to base as many troops as they like in whatever format they like on Greenland. So, you know, up until about 20 years ago, there was 300,000 US troops on Greenland, including a nuclear air base. In fact, there are certainly reports of a nuclear bomb that was lost over Greenland about 40 years ago and never found. So I don't know if it was found secretly and they've done away with it, or whether it's still there somewhere under the ice. But anyway, so the United States has always had the right under that Second World War treaty to put as many military installations as it wants on the island. And secondly, you're honestly telling me that if the United States really wants the rare earths and wants the oil and so on, they couldn't do a deal with every one of the Greenlanders. There's not that many of them. I think it's fewer than 100,000.
56,000.
There you go. Exactly. It's
well,
not
most,
that many.
I think the inhabitants, I mean, most of those, I think, are Danes rather than Greenlanders.
Well, exactly. And you know, you're honestly telling me that $500 million, that's $1 million each, wouldn't, you know, secure some sort of treaty status, you know, perhaps a territory, perhaps a state of the United States if they really wanted to. So I think quite a lot of this is noise in that sense. I don't find it particularly helpful. It somewhat leaves me a bit cold when major world leaders are saying this could lead to the end of NATO, which only encourages Russia and China to push harder in these sort of areas. So, you know, I'm not sure it's particularly helpful to say that. But it's certainly true that the United States has many options other than stepping in, you know, militarily.
But why would they need to? If you say, look, they've got the right, we know they've already got those bases there, and we know, okay, there's oil, there's mineral reserves. So they don't need any more oil. America's got plenty of oil of its own. It's trying to get back the oil reserves the oil that they were accessing through American firms that were seized by Chavez and Maduro in Venezuela. Is this about strategic importance, and is this about a threat from China and Russia? Because we've got, these axis of evil. We know that's been an issue in Venezuela. That they're working with Maduro. Is this a concern about Greenland? Because we've heard a lot about how the strategic importance of Greenland for the Arctic, protecting that North Atlantic, those North Atlantic seas, and huge number of Russian and Chinese vessels in that area. Is that a genuine strategic defence concern for America?
Yes, and I think it's a perfectly reasonable one. I mean, if you look at the Chinese and Russian ships now using the Arctic, which of course used to be frozen all year round, but now has some element of summer passage. I wouldn't overstate it, but some element of summer passage. It certainly is an element, but that's why they could exercise the existing treaty that's been going for whatever it is, over 80 years now, and put as much as they want up there. The Canadians are investing more in their over-the-horizon capability, and many other people are sort of looking at it in Norway and places like that in order to play their part. So I certainly think there's a strong argument that NATO needs to do more in the High North. I don't think there's much debate about that. And I think the United States is right to put pressure on us, on the Danes and others who maybe haven't quite, frankly, played the part that they should have done over recent years, to do more. But I'm not sure seizing territory really helps or hinders. I mean, American businesses can exploit those resources and get rich off what's there anyway, and American troops can be based up there anyway. So I think quite a lot of this is changing the debate in Washington.
Is it just sort of saber rattling? Is it all talk? Is it a message not to the people of Greenland or the coalition of the willing in Paris right now? Is it actually a message to China and Russia basically saying, and we've heard this a lot, this national national security strategy, that, basically, this is where we're in charge, don't mess with us.
So I think a large element of it is reasserting US hegemonic control over the Americas, North and South, and demonstrating that they are fully committed to defending their area and, in fact, to having a sphere of influence in a way that we haven't seen since the 1800s.
So should we be condemning that? Because we've got the Emily Thornberrys of the world. I'm sure you're a big fan as well. The chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Labour MP, used to be dinner party companion of the Prime Minister's until she didn't get a job in his cabinet last year, but won. But condemning this and all this talk about the rules-based international order and Keir Starmer not standing up to Donald Trump on this. Is she right or is he right?
Look, my problem with all of this is, frankly, if you're not willing to pay for the police, why do you think the judges are going to listen to you? I mean, it's a really strange thing where we have effectively lived under a US security umbrella almost for 20 or 30 years. I'd say only for 20 or 30 years, because before then we played our part. We paid 5%, we paid 4%, whatever it was. We paid a large element for our own defense as part of the Cold War. Exactly right. And, we demonstrated our capability by things like the 1982 Falklands War, where we demonstrated that we were not only capable, but we were resolute. Well, in the last year, what are the lessons that the President of the United States and the US people are going to draw from us? We're not even willing to argue in court over the Chagos Islands, let alone fight for them. We're not serious. We're not a serious country. So when you hear people saying, oh, well, you're breaking international law, hang on a minute. International law doesn't apply to Russia and China and Iran because they ignore it. Yep. It doesn't apply to Europe because it's too weak. So the only people it really applies to is the US. Well, funnily enough, they're grating at it and they're turning around and they're saying, hang on a minute, if it's only there to constrain us, well, forget it.
Well,
but the reality is, law really matters. But if you think it matters, then you've got to police it. And if we're not willing to pay for it, we can't complain when others don't.
But the reality is you can't police great powers like US, like China. I mean, we barely police Russia, it would appear, because people want to buy their gas more than they want to actually stop them from invading Ukraine. I mean, the reality is that, the international rules-based order is a complete fiction. And it's actually been America being since 1990, the main superpower in the world, and therefore, and you say we're under their umbrella, and what they say goes, and that's the end of the matter.
Well, hang on, I'm going to push back a bit on that, Julia. It's not that you can't police it, it's not that you can police it in the normal way of sort of, you can slap America on the wrist or something like that. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, if you are willing to share your burden, if you're willing to be a security provider of a scale or equivalence to the United States, now that doesn't mean quite to the same size, but if you're at least willing to stump up, so when something goes wrong, you're willing to do something about it, then you have a vote, you have a voice, you have a say in how the world changes. And it means that international organizations, NATO, various international courts, the UN, whatever, they are relevant because you have a relevant voice. If you're not even willing to put your hand in your pocket to pay for defense, well, you're not relevant. Yeah. So that's what I mean by policing. I mean being an equal part.
Are we the UK relevant anymore? Is the EU, is Europe relevant anymore? Given the
in defense terms, no. Sorry, let's be absolutely clear. Defense terms, no, we're not. And you can see that by the fact that, 20 years ago, a US president would have made a quiet call to number 10. The, CIA chief would have spoken to the head of MI6. The head of SOCOM would have phoned up the director of special forces. But as the Prime Minister told us on Saturday, or rather he told Laura Kuenssberg on Saturday, and we saw it on Sunday, he was waiting for the press conference.
I knew nothing. I mean,
seriously, he was waiting for the press conference. But I mean,
I was with you. I was absolutely
He's the Prime Minister of Belgium.
By that.
I mean, sorry, I like Belgium, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah, he should have already had a briefing. His people should have known exactly. I thought it was quite extraordinary, but he didn't know. Well, this is it, because we've got this meeting, the Coalition of the Willing. The willing to do what, we're not quite sure, in Paris right now, hosted by Macron, who loves a meeting, loves hugging people, loves being filmed with Zelensky.
Julia,
what's going to come of that meeting?
But let me go back to you on this, because that is, I think, the real tell. You've seen over the last year and a bit, and the 4 years before there, President Trump turning up at meetings and leaving early, or in fact, sometimes not even turning up, and various US officials not turning up. And I think there's now a real divide between the bureaucratic states and the leader states. And let me tell you what I mean by that. The leader states do stuff. They closed the southern border. They sort out Iran's intervention in the Americas through the drug sales that go through Hezbollah and Venezuela into West Africa and so on, and into America. They do stuff. And then you have the bureaucratic states. They sit down, they have a meeting, they draft a press release, everybody's satisfied, they slap each other on the back, and nothing changes. Now, if you're not willing to make changes, guess what? People will eventually turn to more and more strident voices in the hope that they will actually do it. Now, they may do it or they may be incompetent, but people are looking for the change. And if those who are supposed to deliver the change only deliver another meeting, guess what? Turn somewhere else.
Fascinating to talk to you. Tom Tugendhat, Conservative MP, former Security Minister, very much appreciate you joining us. Tom Slater, listening to all of that, editor of Spiked Online. What do you make of it?
Well, I think one thing that Tom touched on there, which is very telling, is the sense that governments for a very long time, whether it's in the international sphere or even the domestic sphere, just couldn't act. They were always hamstrung. And of course, that's not to say that that means that they should just do anything with no justification or with no accommodation given to what allies think or what have you. But I think now people have had enough of the idea that you can't act, you can't act particularly in line because of international law or because of the lawyers or because of the legal constraints or what have you. Particularly in a fast-moving world, particularly when in an increasingly dangerous world, I think people are looking towards leaders to make decisive decisions in the national interest. Obviously, things that have democratic approval wherever that's possible. But this sense that everything has to be decided by committee, communique, and nothing much happen.
Yeah,
isn't really.
At the end of the day,
the era that we live in.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you haven't got the military might, you haven't got the military willingness, and the ability to get on with it. It's like this idea that the raid in the US carried out in Venezuela, they didn't go through Congress, they didn't warn people. Well, no, of course you can't warn people of that, because then you wouldn't be a surprise raid, for goodness' sake. I mean, it's utterly absurd. What do you make of Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader? She's issued a statement. She said, look, NATO looks fragile. Starmer should ensure that Trump stays in NATO. We want to keep the alliance together. It's one of the things she said we're worried about. We're living in an increasingly dangerous world. The NATO alliance is looking fragile. We want to make sure we keep NATO together. That's why the Prime Minister should be doing everything he can to ensure the President stays at the table. But also, she completely agreed with the stance, the coalition of the willing, that, Greenland's future should be decided by Greenland's people. But, this is an important aspect. But she also, in an interview with Radio 4 today, she was talking about, she doesn't know whether it was legal or not, but the question was the taking of Maduro moral? And she said, yes, it was.
And the only thing I think one should counterbalance against that is the question of what happens next. There is the issue of sovereignty, which I think still applies even if it's a dictatorial regime, because there are precedents that are set there. There's also the question of, are we going to feel morally righteous if this wasn't handled particularly well, things unravel and you have another refugee crisis in Venezuela. But I think the one thing she is absolutely right about is that if we're judging the merits or demerits of any kind of military action, war, intervention, what have you, it's facile to make it, has the UN approved it or not?
Yeah.
Partly because if he was sat at the UN, and also because of the fact that war is what happens when politics breaks down, when other things fail. It's the last resort. When all other remedies
it is an arm of politics. It's the expression of politics, ultimate in the end. And again, I think a lot of people, especially my generation, people who've grown up without war. Okay, yes, we've had Iraq, but most of us are not involved in war. We're not being
wars of choice, foreign policy decisions,
and they're not on our territory. There's not been conscription. But I think a lot of us living with that peace dividend, and certainly my entire adulthood of the end of the Cold War, are just completely and utterly out of touch with the norms of international relations, which I'm afraid are much more conflict-led. And again, a lot of people are completely convinced that most of the world is now a democratic countries. No, the majority of countries in the world are not democratic. The majority of people in this world do not live under a democracy. You don't deal with non-democratic states in the same way you deal with democratic states. And it is a simple matter of fact. And this would be an extraordinary situation if there was an invasion of Greenland. There has been. I'm 99.9% sure there's never been a war between two democratic nations.
It's certainly much less likely to happen, I know for sure. And you're right, because of the fact that people don't want conflict, generally speaking, and also it
well,
tends to
people are
make...
accountable because, you know, Putin can have all the body bags coming back, but what does he care?
Exactly.
Whereas, you know, Keir Starmer would have to care with body bags coming back. Donald Trump would have to care with body bags coming back.
Yeah, and you don't have people at the top just making decisions, going to war for the sake of their own enrichment or personal interest. So absolutely, it's the world we've been reminded in recent years is a lot more complicated and a lot scarier potentially.
And a lot nastier out there.
Yeah.
People are under complete illusion, aren't they? Oh look, I want to get your calls on any of the topics we are talking about. Do get in touch? 0344 499 1000. We'll get some of your texts and tweets as well, and we'll get your calls up next. This is Talk.
Is this just the beginning of something from Donald Trump, or do you think this is a one-off?
Well, and I think that's the other big concern, Jeremy. I mean, are we going to see Donald Trump using the U.S. military to march through the Western Hemisphere? God forbid I say it, the way Adolf Hitler marched through Europe. Or are we looking at a situation too where this is really more, in my mind, I can't help but wonder if this isn't a test to see if the U.S. military will follow any orders he gives.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. It's 12:25. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Coming up, we're going to get to your calls in just a few moments. Lots of you getting in touch about Greenland, but also about actually a call coming up about Crowborough. And migrants, never too far away from a migrant story, are we, in this country? But let's get to some of your messages coming in about European leaders warning Donald Trump that any attempt to seize Greenland would spell the end of NATO. We've had that statement from the coalition of the willing to do what we're not quite sure in Ukraine, basically saying what happens in Denmark, in Denmark and Greenland is up to those people themselves and not to America. Pablo's got in touch saying without the USA there is no NATO anyway. Tom says we stand with Denmark. Greenland must not be another Sudetenland crushed beneath Trump's jackboots. I got there in the end. Elizabeth says, good, the sooner the better that we see the end of NATO. Penny says the EU should fund and supply NATO without American input, then see how well that works. It's a strategic defence issue. Do it, Trump, says Mark. NATO is nothing without the USA. Just go to Greenland and build a bigger base. And Ian says Europe and NATO are destroying Western civilization. It's time for NATO to go, for the European Union to end. Sick and tired of hearing Brussels tell us what to do. Amanda says it'll spell the end of Europe and it'll stop the globalist launching an attack on America from Canada or Greenland. Oh, we've got a conspiracy theory there. And Paul says the EU should fund and supply NATO without American input. Oh, I've done that one already. Yeah, so basically, you're not big fans of NATO. I'm a very big fan of NATO. I'm going to disagree with you, a lot of you there. I think we should very much protect NATO, but I'm not entirely sure that we're doing the right thing by our own defence in terms of our failures to stand up to those who threaten us. Well, let's talk to Matthew, who's on the line from Warrington, who wants to have his say on Greenland. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. Very good afternoon to you, Matthew. What do you want to say?
Good afternoon. I believe that Trump has had enough of Europe and NATO. When he came into power, first thing he said was, you need to up your spending on defence. We're not carrying it anymore. And they haven't. And I think he will annex Greenland in one way, in a friendly way. I don't think it'll be in a violent way, but he will go into Greenland. It'll force NATO to collapse. And then he'll do a new agreement, and it'll be about buying American weapons. It'll also cause Ukraine to struggle because obviously we've got Poland and all the countries around it there, so that'll fall into Putin's hands. There's just more to this than just Russian and Chinese ships and planes around Iceland. He's had enough, and he's not carrying Europe anymore.
In 2018, in his first term in office, Donald Trump was telling other NATO members, you're not paying enough money. I remember backing him on that fully at the time. I completely agree with him on that. And they didn't listen. They are listening now. They are upping their money, but not by enough and not soon enough.
Well, we're in the budget. Rachel from Accounts never even mentioned defence spending. So what is the defence spending? Because we're not seeing anything, are we?
Is it 2.3% or something at the moment? I mean, it's going to go up to 3%, but like in 10 years' time or something.
Yeah, but what are they spending on welfare? We've got more immigrants coming over since Starmer. Our army's about 70,000. We've got more immigrants.
Illegal immigrants. Yeah,
illegal. So we're shambles.
Yeah.
As a country, we've got no navy. I know. I listen to people say send the Royal Navy into the English Channel, stop them coming over. We haven't got a navy anymore.
Yeah,
we
couldn't defend the Falklands now. That's the military have made that clear. Do you think that Donald Trump is right to say, I just don't care anymore, not my problem?
Yeah, I admire him. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea. I think his first term was just a bit of a joke. He's coming now. He's showing the world he's got a set of nads, and he's not going to put up with anyone. He's not tolerate. He said he's going to make America great again, and he will make America great. He's looking at Europe and going, you lot are a bunch of boppers. It's a coalition of the willing. Have you ever heard anything so pathetic?
Yeah, and again, I don't know how many more meetings they can have. Really interesting. And also, thank you for the first mention of NADS on this show for 2026. I appreciate that. Matthew, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Mark, who's in Glasgow. Mark, you want to talk about the story you talked about in the last half an hour or so about Crowborough. This is a little town in East Sussex, which is going to have a military base, basically the edge of the town. It's going to be populated by some 650 illegal migrant men, free to come and go as they please, and the local town has agreed they're going to put some CCTV back up to try and make the place safer. What do you make of that?
My concern with any CCTV is who monitors that, the council and, of course, the police. So in truth, what's going on is they're putting in CCTV because they know it's going to kick off. They know it's going to kick off, and they want to have the evidence against the locals on camera to do something about it.
You think it's going to be used basically against the protesters as opposed to... do you know what? I fear, alas, you're probably right.
I am right. And just one thing, Julia, I'm absolutely with it. The coalition of the willing, honestly, it sounds Orwellian. It's kind of scary. But in truth, they're willing to do nothing but talk. And
no, they hug as well. I will not have you criticise them like that, Mark. They also do a lot of good hugging. They do bromance. They do
hugging,
handshake. They do that bromance handshake and the hugging.
But actually what's going on in those meetings is they put out a press release of something meaningless. They carry on buying the gas and oil from Russia and funding Putin. And in truth, what they're doing is they are working busily away on getting the UK back into the EU via any surreptitious little method they can. That's actually what's going on at those meetings.
That's certainly Keir Starmer's agenda. Please have me back in the club.
It's the Fabian Society agenda.
Everyone keeps saying this is such a load of nonsense, this Fabian Society thing.
It's not. Oh, no, it's not. It really isn't. Every last member of the government.
Yes, because it's the Labour Party lefty group. Of course they were all members. It's like saying all Conservative Party members being a member of the bloody Conservative Party, for goodness sake. Come on.
The billionaires and the globalist billionaires, don't forget. That's not lefty. That's communism.
Right, we're back into the conspiracy theories. Can I just say, for the 18th millionth time on my show, I've met a lot of these people. They're not competent enough to run a conspiracy. Trust me. Mark, thank you. Brilliant call. Great to talk to you. Tom Slater. I mean, look, no one's got much confidence in the coalition of the willing. That's for sure.
No, I heard it referred to on the radio this morning as the so-called coalition of the willing. I thought that was a very telling.
Well, I think coalition of willing to do what? That's the question. Yeah. Show us, and willing is one thing. Able is another matter.
Quite. I think that's become clear. They're just waiting for the Americans to row in behind them. And they've got a US president which isn't necessarily willing to do that.
No, absolutely. And also, by the way, with Biden as well, Biden could have given enough help to Ukraine to have prevented that war in the first place, and indeed to have basically cut Russia off straight away. The idea that Russia could stand up to a full NATO, I don't sodding well think so.
Biden said he'd tolerate a minor incursion. Do you remember that before the actual invasion began? The idea that it's just Trump who has let Ukraine down is not
absolutely not true. We're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to be talking about, well, someone who's definitely let us down, has certainly let down Jewish community in this country, but I would say everybody in this country who believes in the basically the law being applied fairly to everybody, is the Chief Constable of the West Midlands Police. We're going to talk about how the hell that man is still in a job up next with Jake Wallace-Simons. Don't want to miss that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:36 is the time. Let's talk about the Chief Constable of the West Midlands Police, who's been called to ask questions second time by the Home Affairs Select Committee in the House of Commons today. Why? Well, because he blatantly openly, very clearly, provably lied last time he spoke to them. He was giving evidence about the decision of the West Midlands Police and Birmingham City Council to cancel, to basically ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans, football fans, from attending a football match against Aston Villa late last year in Birmingham. Let's talk about this right now with Jake Wallace-Simons. He's author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself, and joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Jake.
Hi, good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, look, this is a complicated story. It's been going on for quite some time. Can you just run us through what has happened and why there are big question marks about the future of this chief constable over what he claimed had been the reasons behind the ban on the Tel Aviv fans?
Yeah, I'll do my best. It is quite complicated. So I think the best way to look at it is in terms of a timeline. So it begins on October the 29th last year when the draw took place and Maccabi Tel Aviv, the Israeli team, were drawn to play Aston Villa in November. A couple of days after that, literally within the week, Jeremy Corbyn and Ayub Khan, the local Gaza independent representing Aston Villa, launched a petition to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv from playing. And they gave three reasons for that in the petition. You can go back and read it. Two of them are regarding to their identity as Israelis. One is the allegation of genocide, and the other is that everyone in Europe's now boycotting Israel. Yeah. And the third reason was about some alleged misbehaviour of Israeli fans in Amsterdam. So there was a subsequent meeting on October the 7th thereafter, what a date, behind closed doors with the Safety Advisory Group. The police were there and other local community officials. And West Midlands Police said that they admitted they favoured banning the Israeli fans, quote, in the absence of intelligence.
So they didn't have any evidence, but they thought it was a good idea to ban them anyway.
Their gut told them that was the right decision. And at that meeting, there were two councillors, Wasim Zafar and Mubtaz Hussain, who both had openly supported boycotting the team because it was Israeli, not for any other reason. Mm-hmm. And they didn't recuse themselves. So they had that clear view before they went into the meeting.
It wasn't. This was supposed to be a meeting about public safety, and they'd already come with that stance.
And obviously it was about more than that. Now, the police outrageously, later on, that line about in the absence of intelligence was redacted from official documents that were released after a freedom of information request. They were trying to cover their tracks, apparently. And it only came to light after the Sunday Times managed to get the full unredacted document leaked over the weekend. So that's one example of why Craig Guilford should have lost his job, in my view, already. But then it gets worse and worse, because on October the 9th, 2 days later, a Birmingham Council official wrote to the police saying, look, can we get, the quote was, a slightly more clear rationale for the ban, as it could be considered anti-Jewish sentiment. Who knows? It could be seen that way. Can I just have a bit more detail as to why you're banning these fans? And then, lo and behold, after that, a week and a half later, the police turns up some more significant intelligence, which turned out to be exaggerated. So it was things like they'd looked at 12,000 Dutch officers were deployed to deal with the football game in Amsterdam. They'd exaggerated it to 5,000. They later talked about Israeli fans chucking people in the river, which wasn't backed up by the Dutch. Dutch police ridiculed West Midlands Police, said it was total rubbish, none of it happened.
But basically the claim was there's been trouble from these fans before. And let's face it, Maccabi Tel Aviv have got something of a reputation, but there had been trouble in Amsterdam, full-scale riots they were claiming, and the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were to blame, and that's what they claimed, that's what the Amsterdam police had told them, despite the fact that the Amsterdam police, in all of their public statements, in court evidence, in a later inquiry, made it very clear that the issue that happened in the Amsterdam match was absolutely down to local Islamist groups going on what they openly called on social media a Jew hunt, attacking Jewish fans from Israel, deliberately going out the way to, and virtually everybody who's prosecuted was somebody from that side of the fighting. Yes. But basically the West Midlands Police basically just said, no, they'd caused the problem. They claimed they'd been told by the Amsterdam police something completely different from what the Amsterdam police had actually told them.
Yeah, I mean, there was evidence, obviously, as has been reported, that there was a big WhatsApp group with hundreds of participants before the Israeli fans landed. Yeah. People were organising this attack on Israeli fans, so it was premeditated. Yeah. Look, you're right. I mean, there are some Maccabi Tel Aviv fans who are hooligans, like many teams have around Europe, but the last 100 games haven't resulted in significant violence. They haven't been banned anywhere. They're just pretty much there. They're not particularly
No,
bad.
but the key issue here is
the key issue is, as you say, that you're talking about the Dutch police rubbishing West Midlands police claims. West Midlands police, Craig Guilford, in response has said that he got this information on a private Zoom call with Dutch police, which mysteriously wasn't recorded or minuted.
Funny
Seems
that.
pretty dubious to me.
And it goes against everything that the Amsterdam police have said in public inquiries and in court about what happened that night. It's no doubt at all, and he's absolutely free to sue me for libel. I'm quite happy with that. The Craig Guilford, the Chief Constable of West Midlands Constabulary, has lied. He has lied repeatedly again, but crucially, he's lied to a select committee in the House of Commons. That's effectively like lying to the British people, lying to Parliament. There are serious repercussions for that. I mean, he could be just carted off to prison straight away, could he not, by the Speaker on a technicality. He's been called back in to answer for himself. But how on earth is this man still in office when it's blatantly obvious that he has lied? And what do we get? What do we make of the motivations for this? Because one of the other things he claimed was that he'd met with local Jewish community leaders, and they were also concerned about the risk of violence towards the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. Now, he'd even named people that he'd met with, some of whom went, "No, I didn't. You made no contact with me." I mean, blatant lies again. That alone not good enough. Not a mistake. Blatant lies. But he did meet, and police in West Midlands did meet repeatedly with leaders, local Islamist community leaders. I don't mean Muslim, but Islamist mosque imams, where they have hosted some extremist views from some various preachers. And that was basically who were the people who were saying, we want these people banned because they're Jews. Let's be honest, that's what they were saying. And by all accounts, the police went along with it, and they might say it's because they wanted to keep the peace, but fundamentally they went along with it because they're afraid that there was going to be trouble caused by, let's face it, anti-Semitic Islamists in Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, there is evidence for that because, I mean, let's set aside the fact that a local imam was filmed saying that his people should show no mercy, quote unquote, to the Tel Aviv fans when they landed in Britain. But also, the original police report graded the risk to Muslims, to Israelis and to Jews of this game. And then subsequently, they changed those assessments as scrutiny began to be applied. So in the original document, before the row, the threat to local Muslims had been described as low, the threat to local Jews as medium, and the threat to Israeli fans as high. However, several weeks later, outrageously, the police had changed this around, so the threat to Muslims was upgraded from low to high. The threat to the Israeli fans had been downgraded from high to medium, and the threat to local Jews had been totally erased.
But it's
obvious. It's obvious what's been going on here. The police are in the pockets of the local Islamists. The Gaza independent MP Ayub Khan, who was agitating for a ban of this team because they're Israeli from the beginning, and his cronies and accomplices. It's obvious that the Islamists and Muslim leaders pull the strings and the police obey whatever they demand. It's outrageous. This is a result of multiculturalism, years of multiculturalism, where different sectarian groups are treated as discrete entities separate from the British public. The police, the chief constable has said repeatedly on videos, thank you to the leaders and elders for allowing me to address your people. Well, you don't need permission from leaders and elders. They're British subjects. You talk directly to them because you're trying to keep them safe. The whole thing stinks. It's a symptom of sectarianism in Britain that we've welcomed with mass immigration.
And we've seen it again and again. We saw it in the case, the Batley Grammar School teacher, no prosecutions, no investigations into the death threats against him as he went into hiding, and everyone just grovelling to local Muslim community. We've seen it when we had that. Was it Keithley with that little lad who went into went into school with a Quran and it got damaged. And was it Wakefield, and and then the local chief constable took the mother, in a little shroud to go and grovel before local community leaders. This is happening again and again and again. Now, we talk about this. Obviously, we're all Islamophobic and bigoted, but the reality is we're allowing these so-called self-appointed community leaders, many of whom have outrageous, disgusting, un-British, whether they're born here or not, un-British views in terms of anti-Semitism, views towards women and towards freedom of speech and freedom of association, that they are being allowed to basically dictate policy by the police, who cannot come to this country for a football match based on their sectarian views. That is totally and utterly unacceptable. And the only reason they get away with it, let's be honest, is the threat of violence, because no one really thinks that everyone else is going to be violent as a result of not getting their way. And that is totally unacceptable.
That's right. I mean, it's impossible for me to accuse any individual or group of being part of the Muslim Brotherhood. But if you take a step back, this is the Muslim Brotherhood playbook that we are seeing. Yep. Entryism infiltrating the levers of control of local government and of national government, crying that people are being Islamophobic when they point out what they're trying to do, dominating their local communities and making sure that they are Islamist and hardline, and gradually working towards, by degrees, step by step, a position where they can take over the host country and turn it into a Sharia into a Sharia state.
And that is a deliberate policy. And ordinary Muslims who've come here, who are either born here or come here to want to get on with their lives, make a life for their families, go take the kids to school, do the shop, go to work. They're being represented by these people, and that's
forcibly, yes, by these self-appointed yep. thugs who are appointing themselves as the sole mouthpieces of the Muslim community, yep. as if all Muslims are extremists and support them. Well, they don't, but they're intimidated. And yep. the thing is that we must remember is that the government report into the Muslim Brotherhood, which named it a national security risk, came out in 2015. Yeah. And still the Muslim Brotherhood has not been banned. They've been entrenched in their position in Britain. Yeah. And we really need to wise up and get strong. Yeah.
Well, no wonder everyone's afraid. If a chief constable of the police in the West Midlands is apparently afraid of these people, then no wonder everyone else is. Jake Wallace-Hyams, thank you so much for coming on and explaining all of that. Appreciate that. Thank you. Tom Slater, listening to all of this. It is absolutely true. We've got MPs. I mean, the Tory MP Nick Timothy has been brilliant on this issue. Andrew Fox, a regular on the show as well, he stood up on this, and Jake Wallace-Hyams as well. But it is absolutely outrageous. The fact that this chief constable is still in the job is mind-blowing to me.
What I hope it reveals and hammers home for people is that this is where multiculturalism leads you, which is not about having different groups around, it's not about people bumping along together, it's about treating people as these groups who have to be tiptoe around, who, if you have one who are willing to, via these community leaders, threaten something might happen, that you just have to kind of bend over public safety yep. and the morality be damned. This is about surrendering the streets to Islamic sectarians who claim to speak on behalf of all yep. Muslims but really just have their own bigoted agenda in mind. That's where we've ended up with this, and it's time yep. that we not only chuck this police chief out, but chuck this whole ideology out.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. Up next, going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be talking about Grok, the AI available easily on X and everywhere else, run by Elon Musk, basically quite happily producing sexualised images of women and children, putting them in bikinis against their will. It's happened to me, and it's happened to my next guest, Samantha Smith. We'll talk to her up next. This is Talk.
Is this just the beginning of something from Donald Trump, or do you think this is a one-off?
Well, and I think that's the other big concern, Jeremy. I mean, are we going to see Donald Trump using the U.S. military to march through the Western Hemisphere? God forbid I say it, the way Adolf Hitler marched through Europe. Or are we looking at a situation too where this is really more, in my mind, I can't help but wonder if this isn't a test to see if the U.S. military will follow any orders he gives.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:52 is the time. Now, if you're of a sensitive disposition, you may want to look away a few times if you're watching us on YouTube right now. Going to be talking about Grok. It's Elon Musk's AI, and it's all over X, or formerly known as Twitter. And it allows people to, well, you can ask questions, but also you can get it to create pictures or to create videos, or you can get it to adjust pictures that already have been put out there. Let me show you a picture that I put out over the Christmas New Year period. I was on holiday in Thailand, had a photo taken of myself and my husband, the bloke from Stoke. I pixelated his face. I thought it was quite a nice photo of the two of us. Pixelated his face because I'd rather people didn't have his identity. Quite a few people tried to get his face unpixelated via Grok to get an idea of what he looked like. It turns out I'm not married to Brad Pitt, but there we are. They weren't able to do that. I had a little bit of a row with Grok about it, saying, why are you doing that? If I've chosen to have my husband's face private, why would you do that? But it got worse, because the next thing that was done was after a user decided to ask to get Grok to put me in a bikini. Look away now if you don't want to see. But Grok decided that it was a good idea and perfectly acceptable to put me in a bikini. I'd like to point out I've got better boobs, but not such a good tummy. It wasn't very accurate. Weirdly, also, it put me in nail varnish as well, which I wasn't wearing at the time, and changed my face, which I thought was a bit strange. Not that impressed with Grok so far. But what an outrageous and disgusting thing to do. Turns out, I'm not the only woman it happens to. It happens to women every single day, in their thousands. And it particularly happened to my next guest, Samantha Smith, who was personally affected by this, well, effectively a deep fake by Grok, when she was put into a bikini when she was attending a protest. Thank you so much for joining us, Samantha.
Thank you for having me. Yes, this was actually from the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
Oh, I thought it was protest, right, yeah.
I know, no, an even more wholesome occasion.
Well, we've actually chosen to blur out the image. So you put it out when you were put in a bikini, but we've chosen to blur it out because it wasn't an image. And you've got a beautiful blue dress, looking you're a gorgeous girl, and someone said, "Oh, put you in a bikini," and you're in a very skimpy bikini in this, and it looks very, very real. That's the scary bit.
It does, and obviously this wasn't a real photo of me, not physically, but it feels just as violating. It feels just as real. It looks like me. It appears like me. I will say I have a better figure as well. I like to think that.
That's what we're offended about. But it is.
Yeah, I definitely don't have a belly button piercing, but it's scary just how high tech this technology is getting and how easily manipulated it can be. So no matter the filters that people have, I had people that were asking Grok to cover me in donut glaze, people that were asking to replace my clothes with shoestrings, people that were wanting to put me in lingerie, people that were saying turn her around and have her bend over.
Oh my God.
There are no limits to the level of depravity that perverts online are able to exploit Grok for.
And they do it openly. They're not even like a fake, accounts with fake names, a lot of them. That's what's extraordinary. Quite a few people having a go at the guy who'd asked on mine, like, why are you asking for that? I mean, my husband was querying it. He's the only one legally obliged to see me in that state. But this is the thing. It's not just grown women. You think, well, people will say, well, you put that picture out there, you asked for it. But it's actually happening to pictures of children as well. Children being, pretty lovely if someone put a picture of their kids out, and then someone saying, put that kid in a bikini. Sorry, that is disgusting and creepy and frankly should be criminal.
No, it absolutely should. And I have seen countless images under my own comments again of I've been very vocal about my experiences of child sexual abuse and grooming, and I have had people in my comment section posting photographs of me as a child, the few ones that I've put online, and posting me in various states of undress, in a bikini, topless in
as
some.
As a child?
Yes, as a child, as a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old. And we've seen it plastered across the internet. And 48, 72 hours later, Grok is still responding to and accepting requests to undress little girls online.
Yeah.
This is not something that's been addressed within Twitter's own ranks.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm amazed actually by how little, I mean, the amount of abuse that anyone can get online, and some of the foul things that people are allowed to say online. Again, I'm a free speech campaigner, but some of that stuff is absolutely disgusting. But the images, particularly disturbing. Now, we've had some, a bit of an outcry. Ofcom have said they're going to make urgent contact with X over whether they're complying with online safety laws, because there's concern that they've been generating these non-consensual photos of women, including the Princess of Wales. Oh, so it's happened to Kate, and now they're going to care about it. But there's a difficult balance, isn't there, in terms of people's freedom of expression and a woman's right to not be put into a bikini or lingerie, or certainly a child's right, just by any random useless, sad, empty-hearted bloke living in his mum's basement.
Absolutely, and this is where the problem lies, because obviously Elon Musk is a free speech absolutist. We've seen time and time again that he takes the libertarian stance, even if that includes potentially harmful language or open slurs. He believes that on his social media platform you have the right to say whatever you would like to say, as long as you are not committing a criminal act. And at the moment, the current legislative framework in Britain is not built to keep up with the pace of technological advancement. We do not have any laws that make it specifically illegal to create this sort of imagery. We don't have any. The Online Safety Bill was enacted in 2023. That, out of everything, you would think would address this sort of thing. But it doesn't. There is nothing that can be put to Elon Musk to say, well, this is illegal, you have to take this down, you have to do this. Ofcom can't enforce laws that don't exist yet. And so women are going to continue to be victimized and undressed and stripped of their dignity, because there just is not the framework in place to support any sort of punishment.
Absolutely, and again, I don't think this is inhibiting someone's freedom of speech and expression or ability to or even humour or satire to allow women to be on and have an online presence without. And having images of themselves without them being sexualised, particularly when it's children. But I think he may have gone too far on this one. Samantha Smith, I so appreciate you talking to us about this, and I so appreciate you fighting back on this. Appreciate you joining us. Tom Slater, just a quick thought from you?
No, it's creepy as hell.
It's just creepy, isn't it?
Done about it. And of course, these platforms, there's all sorts of limits on what Grok is allowed to do in relation to pornographic content, let alone kind of child